Chapter 803. The essence of Scroll of Stealing was the myriad harmonization grand magic, but the scariest thing about it was that thread of thievery energy. As Wuxia had cultivated the 5 elements sword technique of heaven-breaking sword sect, it was like a butcher had a kitchen knife in his hand. He had also cultivated the cultivation technique of White Cloud Immortal sect, and it was like a butcher had a sharp sword made of steel. As for the Inferno Hellfiend scripture, Dark Een Water scripture, and other cultivation techniques, they were like a butcher who had a well-tempered sword. Undoubtedly, the Song of Gale, Dragon Transformation script, and Dragon Kill were like a butcher who had suddenly obtained a submachine gun. With the Book of Ancient God regarding the Tao of Primordial Runes inherited from Scroll of Stealing, the Primordial Tao of Divinity he obtained from Princess Zhonglu, and the Great Light Indestructible Amitabha treasure scripture cultivated by Lord Buddha Amitabha, he was no different from a cruel butcher who had suddenly obtained a heavy machine gun with unlimited ammunition, or a heavy cannon with unlimited ammunition. But, after the thread of thievery energy fused with Wuqi's divine soul, it had changed Wuqi into a bloodthirsty, cruel, and murderous butcher. He had suddenly obtained an infinite ammunition depot, which was filled with nuclear bombs that weighed hundreds of millions of tons. On top of that, all the nuclear bombs were equipped with launchers, and with a flick of his finger, they would be launched and blow up the world. The Natural Phenomena Medallion was a supreme treasure personally crafted by the sacred emperor, Xuanxiu. Once it was activated, it could transform into a world. When Wuqi swallowed it, it only took him 7 days and 7 nights to completely transform it into pure energy and fuse it into his body. A treasure of this grade was extremely difficult to destroy. Even if an ordinary primordial immortal wanted to destroy it, he or she would have to spend thousands, or even tens of thousands of years to slowly refine it with the flame of an alchemy cauldron. But it only took Wuqi 7 days and 7 nights to refine it, and not only did he destroy it, but he had completely turned it into a stream of energy and fused it into his body. The medallion had also fused with Wuqi's divine soul, and all the secrets of the restrictive spells and formations contained in it were mastered by his divine soul. With just a thought, Wuqi would become a human-shaped natural phenomena medallion, and with every move he made, he would be able to unleash the power of earth, water, fire, wind. The extraordinary treasure had provided Wuqi with an enormous amount of energy, which was roughly equivalent to the magic power and energy essence of 100,000 peak-tier gold immortals. It had greatly alleviated Wuqi's terrible hunger. In for a penny, in for a pound. Wuqi opened his mouth and swallowed the pearl, completely digesting it. In a pound, in a pound, in a pound, in a pound, in Shen Wu medallion and Shen pearl, Wu Shen and Shen and was spirit. After a brief moment of pondering, Wuqi swallowed Dark Een Celestial Tower as well. The tower was crafted by Diyu's Directorate of Celestials at the cost of countless rare materials, and the joint efforts of many supreme oracles, and Wuqi had even embedded many rare items in it to enhance its power. Wuqi opened his mouth and swallowed the tower, then unleashed a vast, hazy aura from his divine soul to wrap it up. Immediately, a faint gleam rippled across the surface of the tower. With the help of the thieving energy, it only took Wuqi less than 3 days to completely refine such an extraordinary treasure, including the star pearl and other treasures in it, which he had turned into energy and fused into his body. When the existence mark of Dark Een Celestial Tower was fused with Wuqi's divine soul, when Wuqi opened his eyes, a vast amount of starlight poured out of them, which turned into numerous tiny stars and wheeled rapidly around him, forming a mysterious celestial formation. An obscure fluctuation of time spread out of Wuqi's body. Wherever it passed, the flow of time slowed down rapidly, from a speed of 1,000 times to 1,500 times. Ao Buzan and the others, who were guarding beside Wuqi, could no longer bear the slow flow of time. Their bodies were stiff and their eyes were blank. Not only their normal physiological activities, but even their thoughts had almost come to a standstill. Wuqi laughed. He beckoned at the 18 blood-draining celestial fiends, then opened his mouth and swallowed them as well. The myriad returnants could transform anything into anything. Now that he had such a wonderful cultivation technique, he naturally had to deal with these blood-draining celestial fiends as well. After transforming them into energy to improve his cultivation base, he would be able to manifest new blood-draining celestial fiends at any time when he needed them. At that time, they would no longer be the 18 blood-draining celestial fiends of the original Blood Sea Grand Magic, but Wuxia could have as many as he wanted. The 18 blood-draining celestial fiends had devoured countless rare minerals, and the blood essence of countless immortals and living beings. After that, Wuxia turned them into energy and fused them into his own body. An enormous amount of energy rushed out of them, turning into 18 dragons that surged restlessly in his body. Wuxia took a deep breath and fused all the energy into his body. His empty body was instantly half full, and the terrible hunger was now bearable. After driving the enormous energy in his body to circulate according to the various cultivation techniques he had learned for a while and familiarizing himself with them, Wuxia gave a cold snort and rapidly performed incantation gestures with both hands, controlling the fiend-slaying sword formation to spin and disperse all the primordial experts in the formation, including Buddha Futu. With a sway of his body, Wuxia stepped into the core of the fiend-slaying sword formation and came to the side of the fiend immortal. As soon as he entered the formation, he saw countless dazzling stars, ranging from tens of thousands of miles to hundreds of thousands of miles in diameter, circling the boundless starry sky. As far as his eyes could see, all he could see were stars emitting dazzling light. The terrible star power had condensed into 9 silvery swords in the void, wheeling slowly in the rhythm of the taiji, yin and yang, for divisions and 8 trigrams. Every time the 9 tens of thousands of miles long swords circled in the air, an invisible killing intent would sprinkle down from the sky, turning into a meteor shower, a comet, or even a silver black hole, smashing down on the trapped demon immortals. The almighty fiend expert, who was tightly surrounded by 72 black banners and surrounded by 7 huge fiends, sat firmly on a black cloud, gnashing his teeth and roaring furiously at the void. It was unknown which cultivation technique of the Fiend League this primordial expert practiced. Although it was a technique of the Tao League, he had manifested an avatar with 3 heads, 6 arms and 9 eyes. A pitch-black cloud wheeled over his head, inside of which was a black lotus that emitted plumes of black smoke that swept in all directions, shattering all the attacks that came raining down from above. But the power of the formation was so strong that although he could protect himself, he could not get out of it. As soon as Wuxia stepped into the formation, he immediately exercised the great light indestructible Amitabha treasure scripture, and transformed into the golden avatar of the Buddha with 4 faces and 6 arms. He roared and waved his 6 arms at the same time, unleashing a monstrous golden Buddhist light that transformed into countless layers of sandalwood incense and vaguely evil vanquishing Buddhist light that shot toward the fiend immortal. The divine power of the Buddhist League was the nemesis of demons and ghosts, not to mention the supreme scripture cultivated by the Lord Buddha, Amitabha. Even though the fiend immortal's cultivation base was much stronger than Wuxia's, the black smoke he unleashed still could not withstand the attack of the fiend light, and more than 70% of it was broken like boiling water splashed on snow. Wuxia performed the immovable fundamental incantation with both hands, and recited the mantra of the Buddhist League. At the same time, balls of golden flame shot out of his mouth, which turned into thunderbolts and smashed down. Caught off guard, the 72 black banners around the fiend immortal were hit by the Buddhist League's devil-subduing divine thunder. As the saying goes, evil never triumphs over good. The pure Buddhist divine power blew the banners to pieces. Countless wisps of black smoke rose from the banners, but in the blink of an eye, they were shredded to pieces by the silver starlight. The fiend-slaying sword formation rotated rapidly, and the 9 Kunwu swords shot out of the void and hacked at the fiend immortal. The fiend immortal cried out, and hurriedly pulled out an immortal artifact shaped like the top of a human's head, which transformed into a cloud of black smoke to protect his body. Wuxia cried out as well. Reciting the mantra of the Buddhist League, he plunged down from the sky with the momentum of Mount Tai, his 6 arms smashing randomly on the black smoke like gangsters fighting on the street. Wherever the Buddhist light passed, the black smoke disintegrated, and the 9 Kunwu swords easily pierced into the much thinner black smoke and tore the fiend immortal to pieces. Then Wuxia punched the fiend immortal's forehead, sending a mighty Buddhist power into his spiritual ocean, and severely wounding his immortal soul. The thievery energy transformed into a dense gray energy that burst out of his fist, wrapped around the fiend immortal's immortal soul, and swallowed it. Activating the myriad harmonization grand magic, Wuxia opened his mouth and sucked away all the fiend immortal's magic power and energy essence. Half a month later, Wuxia let out a long roar and flew up into the sky, striding into another part of the formation. A trapped Buddha was sitting cross-legged on a jade lotus throne, facing the rain of starlight swords as if nothing had happened. With the avatar of Amitabha, Wuxia quietly appeared in front of the Buddha, and with a casual wave of his hand, shattered the rain of starlight swords, and even the entire fiend-slaying sword formation trembled violently. The trapped Buddha was overjoyed. He hurriedly rose to his feet on the lotus throne, retracted his divine ability, put his palms together, and bowed respectfully to Wuxia. "Greetings, Buddha." Wuxia did not give the Buddha a chance to finish. 2 blood centipede swords shot out of his nostrils, circled around the Buddha's head, and hacked him until he looked like a bloody gourd. Then, he grabbed the dead Buddha with both hands, and the golden body of the Buddha abruptly turned into a golden stream that rushed into his body. The myriad harmonization grand magic began to work crazily again. 10 days later, Wuxia came to another trapped Buddha. 5 days later, the avatar of Amitabha with 4 faces and 6 arms appeared next to the last trapped Buddha, except Buddha Futu. A fragrant wind and auspicious mist poured out of the fiend-slaying sword formation. With the help of the magic power and energy essence of the 3 Buddhas, as well as the energy transformed from their Buddhist treasures, Wuxia smoothly stepped into the realm of primordial. A 9th-tier primordial immortal was already a real upper-class figure in this universe, and no gold immortals or heaven immortals could compare with him. The power of the fiend-slaying sword formation suddenly skyrocketed 100-fold. With a sway of his body, Wuxia was wrapped in the divine flame of great tranquility, and emanating the pure and rich immortal energy of the innate pure yang universal scripture. Then he walked leisurely to the side of a trapped primordial immortal. The 3 poor primordial immortals had been sneakily attacked by Wuxia, and had their heads chopped off by the blood centipede sword. Now, when they suddenly saw immortal Ding Jun, an important minister of the celestial court, appear in front of them, their first reaction was the same as that of those Buddhas. They hastily rose to their feet and bowed. Therefore, within 10 days, all 3 primordial immortals had become Wuxia's prey, and the Tao techniques they cultivated had become Wuxia's private collection. With the myriad harmonization grand magic and the thievery energy, Wuxia's overall strength had improved in just 1 month, which was equivalent to the magic power and cultivation base that ordinary primordial immortals could achieve after 3 eons of arduous cultivation. The power of the fiend-slaying sword formation grew stronger once again, and with a little reluctance, Wuxia strode up to Buddha Futu. Chapter 804. All the silver swords transformed from 99 Kunwu swords plunged down at the same time, aiming at the spot where Wuxia's fist had struck. The countless stars in the formation dimmed abruptly as all the star power in the entire formation was focused on this one strike. The 99 Kunwu swords joined their heads to their tails, and turned into a silver beam of light that followed Wuxia's fist, and hit the pagoda in an instant. Without hesitation, Wuxia swallowed the lotus of transcending calamity, then nodded at Buddha Futu and said with a smile, "Not enough, I want more. Monk, your status is so noble that ordinary people can't compare to you. To put it bluntly, hand over everything valuable you have except this pagoda, and I'll make sure you leave this place safe and sound." As soon as he said that, Buddha Futu suddenly realized that the topic was not right. He laughed dryly, took off his kasaya and monk robe, and threw them to Wuxia. Then he obediently swore an oath according to Wuxia's words. In the fiend-slaying sword formation, 99 huge silver swords were spinning slowly around a golden pagoda that stood about 100 miles tall. The supreme sword energy mixed with the great power of the stars cut away the infinite Buddhist light emanating from the pagoda layer by layer. But the pagoda kept pouring out golden torrents, and no matter how hard the sword formation tried, it could not touch the pagoda. His body grew to a height of 100 feet. Then he clenched his fists and threw a punch at the pagoda that protected Buddha Futu. After a moment of silence, Wuxia quickly rubbed the thumb, index finger, and middle finger of his right hand. Then, he smiled and said to Buddha Futu, "Well, I swear that as long as you show me enough treasures that can tempt me, I'll immediately open the formation and let you leave. What do you think, monk? After pointing at Wuxia with a trembling finger for a while, Buddha Futu cried out in a hoarse voice. Poor me! How did I meet such a cunning and shameless boy like you? Those Taoist League's ox noses say that we, the Buddhist League, are cunning and wise, and that the heads of the human race are as hard and smelly as stones in a latrine pit. How could you be so cunning? Are you really a human? You're not the incarnation of a monster, are you? He cocked his head and listened for a while, then said to Buddha Futu with a smile. Monk, you better hurry up. Just now, that planet and its satellite were accidentally destroyed by this marquis. Well, the world of mortals seems to be a place where a slight change in one part will affect the whole body, right? The destruction of 2 celestial bodies, I wonder how much trouble it will cause. Amitabha had enlightened Buddha Futu, allowing his Yuanling to transform into a human, and possess the overall prowess of a Buddha. However, the Buddha body that Yuanling had transformed into was extremely fragile. Last time, Wuxia had chopped half of it with his sword. As a result, Wuqi's strength had skyrocketed. He had to refine this pagoda into a fleshly body, and then fuse the body of Yuanling with it. Only then would he have the true and complete form of Buddha Futu. After pondering for a long time, Buddha Futu pointed a finger at the Kunwu sword spinning in midair and said with a wry smile, I'm really out of luck. Well, you do have the strength to suppress me forever. As long as you can suppress me in a place where I can't see the sun and cut off the connection between me and the Lord Buddha, I'll never see the sun again. Hehe, are you willing to part with these 108 Kunwu swords? Buddha Futu was very straightforward. He only cared about his true form, the pagoda, and did not care about the other worldly possessions. After all, he was Amitabha's absolute confidant, and he had countless treasures of the Buddhist League. No matter who he was missing, he could not be missing. As long as he could return to Amitabha's Buddhist realm safely, it would be a piece of cake for him to get a good set of Buddhist treasures. With its formidable defense, the fiend-slaying formation could do nothing to Buddha Futu, but the same could not be said for Buddha Futu. Unless Wuxia could reach the level of Amitabha, he could not break through Buddha Futu's true form and kill him even with the sword formation. Buddha Futu was stunned for a long time. His face turned purple with anger, and he almost coughed up blood. With a faint smile on his face, Wuxia appeared next to the flying ship where Liu Bang and others were hiding. Sitting cross-legged on the pagoda with his eyes narrowed, Buddha Futu murmured to himself, The others? Well, who else is still alive? Buddha Futu's face, who had been calm all this time, suddenly turned dark. He leaped to his feet, pointed a finger at Wuxia and cursed, Fuck your 18 generations of ancestors. I'll fuck them all to my heart's content, whether they are men or women. Bastard. It's one thing for you to destroy a few mountains up there, but how could you destroy their home planet? I swear After carefully examining Buddha Futu's body, and finding that there was nothing left on him, Wuxia sighed and waved his hand. As the starlight faded away, he said, Give me a moment. I'll send you away after I've dealt with the others. Apart from a cloth wrapping around his crotch, Wuxia did not leave anything for Buddha Futu. Wuxia immediately interrupted him and said grimly, Bald donkey, since you dared to swear that you will kill me, I'll kill you today even if I have to risk everything. Swear now that you'll never attack me again, or I'll put you down today. Swear by your natal name, Yuanling. Swear by the name of your master, Amitabha, that if you see me again in the future, you'll run 1,000,000,000,000 miles away from me and never attack me again. Buddha Futu chuckled, then shook his head and said, That's right. Who else can be poor like us Buddhas? After obtaining the scripture Amitabha cultivated, Wuxia could naturally see what Buddha Futu's biggest problem was. It was not only the kasaya and monk robe, but also the belt woven with dragon tendons around his waist, the monk boots made of jade-stemmed bodhi leaves, and the monk's trousers that came with the robe. The prayer beads in his hand were also stripped clean by Wuxia. The largest bead on the beads was a storage magical artifact, which contained all of Buddha Futu's personal treasures. Wuxia sighed. This was where Buddha Futu's problem lay. His defense was too strong. With Wuqi's current cultivation base, he still had a chance to devour Yuanling with a sneak attack from behind, but it was impossible to destroy him in a head-on confrontation. Wuqi smiled and ignored Buddhafuta's scolding. Stepping on a clump of silver light and flying a few circles around the pagoda, Wuqi's body elongated as numerous translucent purple-gold dragon scales emerged and wrapped him completely. 2 9-pronged dragon horns, each nearly 10 feet long, grew out of his forehead, emanating beams of auspicious light that condensed into a dazzling cloak behind Wuqi's back. Meanwhile, the sky-veiling flag of chaos had transformed into a large dark cloud that enveloped the flying ship, resisting the attack of the 12 Kunwu swords. As the Buddhist artifact that Amitabha had carried with him for so many years, Buddhafutu was a purely defensive artifact that occasionally served as a suppressor to suppress some powerful living beings. When it came to offensive techniques, Buddhafutu was not very good at them. He was now worrying about how to transform his true form into a human, so that he could fuse Yuanling with his fleshly body. How could he have the time to study the divine abilities of the Buddhist League with great destructive power? Frowning, Wuqi stared at Buddhafutu for about 10 minutes, then nodded slowly and said, "It's true that I can't kill you now, but I have enough confidence to suppress you. However, I have enough confidence to suppress you. I can completely suppress you and make you disappear for billions of years. Even if I give up on the 108 Kunwu swords. You can't absorb any natural energy or obtain any power of faith, so you can't refine your true form and become a real Buddha." When he saw Wuqi step into the formation, Buddhafutu bellowed furiously, "How dare you take advantage of the Buddhist League, you despicable man! That planet is promised to King Yongqiu for breaking through the Hongmengpanga heaven. How dare you take all the benefits from it?" But compared to his formidable defense, Buddhafuta's offensive power was so weak that it was pathetic. With a clap of his hand, the golden lotus throne hovering over his head flew in front of Wuqi and said in a deep voice, "Apart from me, only the 8 supreme Buddhas of the Buddhist League have one of the Dharma lotuses of traversing calamity transformed from the first batch of 9 lotus seeds on Lord Buddha's 8 treasures lotus throne." Buddhafutu uttered a Buddhist mantra as a great golden light burst out of him, illuminating tens of thousands of miles in an instant. The golden pagoda stood between the heaven and the earth, motionless. When Wuqi's fist was still several tens of feet away from the pagoda, the force of his fist was gradually melted by the beams of golden light. At last, his fist brushed past the pagoda like a gentle breeze. Likewise, the silver light beam transformed from Kunwu swords failed to touch the pagoda. The void in the surroundings vibrated, and the swords pierced through the void diagonally, missing the target as well. Frowning, Buddhafutu sat cross-legged on top of the gourd at the top of the pagoda. A golden lotus throne hung down from the top of his head, emitting a purple golden light that shielded him. Coupled with the protection of the pagoda, he was tightly protected in the center. No matter how the formation outside changed, he did not even flinch, as if he was not worried about his own safety. But from time to time he would clap his hands and shoot out a few beams of golden light, exploding and stirring up large ripples in the silver light. Initially, Wuqi wanted to take away the crotch-wrapping cloth made of rare materials, but on second thought, Wuqi did not have the courage to swallow it. That was why Wuqi did not let Buddhafutu return to the Buddhist realm naked. With the power of this pagoda, if Buddhafutu could refine his true form into a human body, his golden body would definitely be stronger than all the present Buddhas of the Buddhist League, and might even surpass his master, Amitabha, and become the #1 indestructible golden body in the Buddhist League. With such a wonderful future waiting for Buddhafutu, Wuqi did not believe that he could tolerate being suppressed for countless years. Buddhafutu stared coldly at Wuqi and said with a sneer, "Boy, there's no way you can break through my defense. If I were so easy to kill, wouldn't Lord Buddha have been killed countless times already? You can't do it. If it's someone with the cultivation base of a peak-level first-tier primordial immortal, or the first master of the secret palace, they might be able to refine me." Wuqi did not even dare to pretend to be Amitabha to deceive Buddhafutu into removing his defense. Unlike those 3 unlucky Buddhas, Buddhafutu had followed Amitabha for countless tribulations, so he naturally had a thorough understanding of Amitabha's aura. Wuqi might be able to deceive others, but how could he possibly deceive Buddhafutu, who was almost Amitabha's right-hand man? Instead, It would expose the fact that Wuxia was proficient in the great light indestructible Umitba treasure scripture. And that would force Umitba to hunt Wuxia all over the world. With a faint smile on his face, Wuxia revealed his true appearance and appeared in front of Buddha Futu. Chapter 805. The Sky-Veiling Flag of Chaos was the natal immortal artifact of the North Celestial Emperor, one of the 5 celestial emperors of heaven and earth. It was a unique treasure produced in the primordial world, capable of breaking through the void and stabilizing the earth, water, fire and wind. Ordinary elemental magic attacks had no effect on it, and it could weaken more than 90% of the attacks of evil spells, curses and other divine abilities. Liu Bang had only borrowed the Sky-Veiling Flag of Chaos from the North Celestial Emperor, which meant he could only exert 1/10,000th of the primordial world's power. However, this 1/10,000th of defense was enough to prevent the 12 Kunwu swords from getting close to him. One reason was that Wuxia did not personally preside over the sword formation, and the other was that the Sky-Veiling Flag of Chaos was too powerful. After all, the Kunwu swords forged by the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan were acquired divine weapons, so they could not be compared with the Sky-Veiling Flag of Chaos. Appearing outside the flying ship with his true appearance, Wuxia faced Liu Bang through the thick dark cloud. Gnashing his teeth, Liu Bang glared at Wuxia and said, "Marquis of East Province, you've ruined my plan again." Wuxia nodded and said to Liu Bang with a smile, "Yes, I'll return to Liangzhu later, and tell King Baishan that you killed King Tang Qiu, Ji Tao." Liu Bang trembled with anger. He pointed a finger at Wuxia and growled, "Shameless." Wuxia smiled and pouted his lips, revealing a pair of white teeth that shone with a dazzling gleam. "Look, I have teeth." With a strange laugh, Wuxia said, "If King of Han falls into my hands, I guarantee you won't have a single tooth left." The furious Liu Bang snorted and suddenly calmed down. Narrowing his eyes and stroking his long beard, he seemed to be thinking about something. Instead, Fan Kuai, who was standing behind Liu Bang, suddenly leaped forward with a loud roar and threw the spear in his hand at Wuqia's chest with a whistling sound. The spear was 18 feet long and pitch black, forged with 99 kinds of divine iron alloys. It was clean and unadorned, and weighed 36,000 kilograms. Coupled with thousands of restrictive runes, once activated, it felt like hundreds of mountains were pressing down on Wuqia's head, causing its weight to soar tens of thousands of times. Fan Kuai threw the spear with all his strength, and all the restrictive spells on the spear were activated at the same time. A pitch-black aura throbbed like a flame, wrapped around the spear, and countless restrictive runes could be seen spinning in it. The void around Wuxia, who was facing the spear, suddenly sank, and the gravity around him increased by more than 10,000 times. At this moment, Fan Kuai's real cultivation base was exposed to Wuxia. As a pure body cultivator, he only had the immortal energy of a 36th tier heaven immortal, which was enough for him to fly on a cloud. His enormous energy essence was swirling like a dragon in his body, and his terrible fleshly strength was equivalent to that of a peak-level gold immortal. With a wave of his hand or a stamp of his foot, he could unleash the full force of a peak-level gold immortal with the help of his natal gold immortal artifact. Not bad. Thick purple gold dragon scales emerged on Wuqia's right palm as he grabbed the spear as easily as grabbing a blade of grass. As a body cultivator, Wuqia's fleshly body had also broken through the realm of primordial. According to the difference in strength between a 9th-tier primordial immortal and a peak-level gold immortal, Wuqia's fleshly strength was 100,000 times stronger than Fan Kuai's. His every move was accompanied by the power of the heavenly Tao, so Fan Kuai's attack was nothing to him. With a swipe of his palm on the spear, Wuxia had removed all 3,600 restrictive runes in it. Then he nodded at the dumbfounded Fan Kuai and said with a smile, "The material of this spear is good, but the restrictive arrays in it are rubbish. 3,600 restrictive runes? Why do you need so many? Come, let me show you what the spear I've modified looks like." A bright light gathered at the tip of his finger, as Wuxia casually threw a rune recorded in the ancient god scroll that represented the essence of gravity, into the spear. The rune, about 10 feet in circumference and shaped like a small hill, exuding a mighty pressure, slowly sank into the spear. In the blink of an eye, the 18 feet long spear shrank inwardly to only 9 feet long. A terrifying gravitational force gushed out from the inside of the spear, forcefully compressing the spear by more than half. The impact of a single rune was far greater than the 3,600 layers of restrictive spells on the spear. Wuqi weighed the spear in his hand, which had become much heavier, and then casually threw it over to Fan Kuai. Standing on the prow of the ship, Lu Bang raised his brows and uttered a spell. The dark cloud transformed from the sky-veiling flag of chaos, wrapped up the spear, and slowly pulled it to the ship. Staring fixedly at Wuqi, Fan Kuai gritted his teeth and said, "It's just a rune. Do you think a rune can be compared to the 3,600 runes carefully arranged by Xian Xingzi, the #1 immortal craftsman of the Celestial Court?" Sneering, he grabbed the spear that Wuqi had just reforged. Fan Kuai's dark, hairy face suddenly turned pale, and as soon as he held the spear, his arm was suddenly stretched by more than a foot. A series of cracking sounds rang out as all the muscles on his right arm, from his shoulder to his wrist, were broken and blood sprayed out from dozens of wounds. The severe pain made him howl miserably, and he loosened his grip, letting the spear fall and smash heavily on the deck of the flying ship. The deck of the flying ship that was covered in defensive spells erupted with a dazzling blue light. Then, with a screeching sound that made one's teeth ache, the blue light shattered and the 3-foot-thick deck was easily crushed by the spear. The spear pierced through the entire flying ship and drilled out from the bottom. Then it was wrapped up in the black cloud that the primordial sky-covering flag released, firmly imprisoning it in midair. The runes he had casually injected into the spear, which represented the essence of gravity, made the spear, which weighed 36,000 kilograms, weigh as much as hundreds of stars. With the physical strength of a peak-level gold immortal, Fan Kuai could play with the moon and the stars, but at most he could only play with the power of 2 or 3 stars. The tremendous force of hundreds of stars came crashing down, but his arm was only broken into dozens of pieces instead of completely breaking. That was because he had reacted quickly and let go early. This was the gap between a primordial immortal and a peak-level gold immortal. Or this was the difference between an almighty expert with the cultivation base of Dao Realm and an ant. In ancient times, only those who had entered the Dao Realm had the power to control their own destiny, and those below the Dao Realm could be ignored. The faces of Lu Bang and the others fell instantly. Suddenly, Zhang Liang pulled out a dazzling golden pen and wrote 360 characters of thunder, shrouded in purple mist in the void. The ancient characters of birds and insects twisted and wheeled in the void, and soon, all 360 of them merged into one, transforming into a huge ball of purple thunderbolt that came smashing toward Wuqi at an incredible speed. Before the lightning contained in the ball of lightning, which was powerful enough to completely scorch the surface of a planet, could be released, Wuqi grabbed it, shoved it into his mouth and swallowed it with a smile. As he had just made a breakthrough, Wuqi was still a little hungry. The lightning contained in the ball of lightning was extremely powerful, which made it a perfect snack to fill his stomach. It was hard to tell that Zhang Liang, who usually kept a low profile, had the cultivation base of a peak-level gold immortal. They must have some strange immortal treasures with them, as even Wuqi could not see through their real cultivation base. Of course, this was also because the sky-veiling flag of chaos had blocked his sight. With Wuqi's current cultivation base, without the flag he could easily see through the real strength of Lu Bang and the others. Face pale, Zhang Liang stared at Wuqi for a long time, then finally shook his head and said, "You're already a primordial immortal. I'm no match for you." Han Xian gave a cold snort. The 3 stars in his eyes shone with a dazzling light as he casually threw out 3 blood-colored energy beams at Wuqi. The murderous aura of the 3 stars, Greed, 7 Killing, and Vanquisher, shot out whistling toward Wuqi's neck, chest, and lower abdomen. The surrounding void had been sealed by the fiend-slaying sword formation, so Han Xian could not mobilize the star power in the outside world. The 3 blood-colored energy beams he threw out at the moment were the natal star power he had stored in his body and fused with his blood essence. They were extremely powerful and refined, dozens of times stronger than the attacks he usually launched with external forces. But as soon as Wuqi opened his mouth, he still swallowed them. After practicing the myriad harmonization grand magic Everything in the world could be devoured by Wuxia, and Han Xian's attack, which contained his blood essence, was a supreme delicacy. As Han Xian was only a peak-level gold immortal, Wuxia easily digested the 3 blood-colored energy beams. Burping slightly, Wuxia turned to Han Xian and said with a smile, Han Xian? I fought you once last time, but I was still no match for you. This time. Haha, if you have the guts to come out, I'll kill you. What do you say? Han Xian's face flickered slightly. He glanced at Liu Bang, gnashed his teeth, and was about to rush out of the protective circle of the sky-veiling flag of chaos. Grabbing Han Xian's shoulder, Liu Bang smiled at Wuxia and said, Marquis, you are already a primordial immortal. Why do you have to make things difficult for us juniors? Well, my father is the great demon-slaying Celestial Emperor of the Celestial Court in the South Pole, and he is the Crimson Emperor of the 5 Celestial Emperors of the 5 directions. My father is already a peak-level 2nd-tier primordial immortal. If you dare to do anything to me, I'm afraid. Ha 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 ha. Liu Bang squinted his eyes and laughed so hard that his saliva flew all over the place. Looking at Liu Bang, Wuxia pondered for a moment, then nodded and said with a smile, I won't kill you. Liu Bang gave him a thumbs up and said seriously, That's a wise move. Marquis, please show me mercy today, and I'll definitely repay you in the future. Staring at Liu Bang, Wuxia sneered and said, I won't kill you, but you'll have to take out all your valuables. Well, as the son of the Crimson Emperor, I don't believe that you don't have any valuables with you. Well, you can leave one of your natal immortal artifacts. After all, it's better to leave a way out in the future. Apart from that, you can't leave even a copper coin behind. Liu Bang burst out laughing, nodded, and said, You're right. Worldly possessions are just fleeting clouds. How can they be more important than your own life? As he laughed, Liu Bang took off a glowing storage ring shaped like a golden dragon, and threw it to Wuxia. Then he waved his hand generously and said, All my savings are in it. Marquis, you can. Before he could finish, Liu Bang was stunned by Wuqi's action. Wuxia grabbed the ring, then pointed his finger at an inconspicuous jade-colored thread tied to Liu Bang's right wrist, on which hung a string of 13 small jade slips that looked like protective talismans. Liu Bang opened his mouth but did not say a word. As if his father had died, he took off the string of jade slips and threw them to Wuxia painfully. Each of these small jade slips sealed a small dimensional void, and these jade slips were the only coordinate portals that led to those dimensional voids. All of Liu Bang's personal treasures were in them. Wuxia looked at Liu Bang and his companions with a smile and said, Don't play any tricks. Just take out all your money. Well, that's right, Your Excellency Xiao, he is very wise. The pearl on your neck seems to be a storage magic treasure, isn't it? Don't be secretive and take it out quickly. TSK, Your Excellency Han Xian is so straightforward. Well, no, I don't want the undergarment. It's too wicked to take it away. After a round of looting, Liu Bang and his companions looked at Wuxia with tears in their eyes. Liu Bang said angrily, Can I go now? Wuxia nodded with a smile and said, As long as you tell me your background, you can go. Liu Bang froze for a moment. Chapter 806. Wuxia did not ask Liu Bang to tell him what the Celestial Court's plan was. No matter what the Celestial Court was going to do, the fact that the Buddhist League had joined hands with the Celestial Court, and that someone had even begun to block the entrance of Empress Hua's palace, proved that things were beyond redemption. The Huahuang clan, one of the creators of the human race, who now controlled the myriad spirit cauldron, the source of the souls of billions of living beings under the heaven and earth, who had stepped into the realm of Tao fusing with the boundless virtues during the time of the mysterious figure, was now being blocked by someone. The water was deep and muddy. Wuxia was not interested in such a muddy water now. Whether Diyu collapsed, and whether Pangu continent was in the hands of the Celestial Court and the Buddhist League, it had nothing to do with Wuxia. The more muddy the water, the easier it was to fish. When Diyu was strong, Wuxia would be the Marquis of Diyu. When Diyu declined, the Celestial Court would be in control of everything, and Wuxia would be the sect leader of the underhand sect. As a primordial immortal, he could still attain a high position in the Celestial Court. At most, he would just change his face. What was so troublesome about that? Therefore, Wuqi did not care about the celestial court's plan. He was just curious about Liu Bang's background. After all, Liu Bang was a figure in the history that Wuqi was familiar with. Everything about him was so interesting. Liu Bang's face was unsightly, but in the face of Wuqi's violent threat, he could only gnash his teeth and tell him his background. To be precise, Liu Bang was the son of Crimson Emperor, the great celestial emperor of the South Pole of the Celestial Court, who commanded all living beings to patrol the universe. Crimson Emperor, the great celestial emperor of the South Pole of the Celestial Court, held all the departments of the Celestial Court, and was in charge of wiping out all the forces that disrespected the Celestial Court. In other words, the Celestial Court often followed the principle of those who submit will prosper, and those who oppose will perish. And Crimson Emperor was the executor of this policy. As Crimson Emperor's son, Liu Bang was born 3 eons ago. He was smart and capable, and was born with the overall strength of a peak-level Heaven Immortal, and soon stepped into the realm of Gold Immortal. Unfortunately, his mother's clan did not have a high status, and was just an ordinary concubine. Emperor's concubine. So the Liu Bang was become more capable and talented, and the Liu Bang was become more powerful. In the end, Liu Bang made a mistake under the scheme of his brothers, and was severely punished by the Scarlet Emperor. He had to undertake the most arduous and unrewarding task, reincarnation, eradicating all forces that could pose a threat to the mortal world. Just as Crown Prince Chongqing and the others had arranged, they had disturbed the warring states on Earth and helped the Emperor of Qin, Yingzheng. The Celestial Court immediately sent immortals to shake the foundation of Daqin. Then Liu Bang was reincarnated into the mortal world, rose to power, and killed Xiangyu, the hegemon king of Western Chu, and the others who were supported by King Yangshan's clan after the Qin dynasty was plunged into chaos. After that, Liu Bang established the Great Han Dynasty, and gathered the human sovereign qi of the mortal world. This human sovereign qi was then collected by the Scarlet Emperor, using an immortal weapon to refine his own immortal weapon. According to the punishment Liu Bang had received, he would probably have to reincarnate tens of thousands of times, spend tens of thousands of lifetimes in the mortal world, build tens of thousands of dynasties, and gather such an enormous amount of human sovereign qi before Crimson Emperor could cancel his punishment. However, after Liu Bang returned to the Celestial Court after his last reincarnation, he quickly established a relationship with the Crown Prince of the Great Celestial Emperor of the Celestial Court. The Crown Prince intervened and persuaded Crimson Emperor to cancel his punishment, and asked him to serve as the special envoy of the Celestial Court stationed in Diyu, secretly carrying out some collusion missions. That was how Wuqi met Liu Bang on Penghu continent. If Liu Bang had not been so quick to curry favor this time, he would have been reincarnated again hundreds of years ago, and no one knew where he was now, leading a peasant rebellion and being beaten up by others. With a wry smile on his face, Liu Bang looked at Wuqi and said coolly, "You see, that's who I am. I'm a poor man who is not loved by my father, so I can only struggle on my own. If I hadn't befriended the Crown Prince this time, I'm afraid I would never have a chance to make a name for myself." Wuqi looked at Liu Bang. A poor man who struggled on his own? How could someone who befriended the Crown Prince of the Celestial Court and borrowed the sky-veiling flag of chaos from the North Celestial Emperor be a poor man? If that were the case, those immortals who had no backing should have cut their own throats a long time ago. With a cold snort, Wuqi waved his hand, and the 108 Kunwu swords flew back into his body, shrouded in a vast starlight. As soon as the formation was retracted, the void suddenly darkened, and the countless stars within tens of thousands of miles around the formation disappeared. In the dark sky, there were only a few stars the size of beans shining brightly. In the void 100 miles away, Buddha stomped his feet and roared in exasperation. "You bastard! Did you really shatter this mortal world? Heavens, the laws of the heavenly Tao here are crumbling. You damn thing!" Having no time to settle the score with Wuqi, Buddha cried out the name of Buddha, transformed into a beam of golden light, and sped away together with the pagoda. Sitting cross-legged in the sky where the star used to be, Buddha unleashed a torrent of Buddhist energy that transformed into a huge star hovering in midair. Buddhafutu had condensed a vast planet with his own Buddhist power, temporarily replacing the position of the planet devoured by Wuxia among the countless mortal worlds, and temporarily stopping the chain reaction in the mortal worlds caused by the destruction of the planet. Wuxia grinned and waved at the dumbfounded Lu Bang. Then the dark Yin celestial tower flew out from the top of his head. The void exploded with a boom, and Wuxia sped away with Ao Buzan and the others. Lu Bang's face flickered as he stared at Buddhafutu in a daze. He gave the direction in which Wuxia had disappeared with a venomous look, then pointed a finger at the sky and recited a few incantations under his breath. All of a sudden, a speck of golden light flashed across the boundless void. Accompanied by a dull rumble of thunder, hundreds of huge golden four-wheeled chariots sped through the void, pulled by golden flood dragons. There were dozens of heavenly generals in golden heavy armor on each four-wheeled chariot. The heavenly general leading the chariot was surrounded by purple flames, and he emitted a tremendous aura that almost shattered this mortal world into pieces. His aura was especially astonishing. Buddhafuta's furious cry came from afar. "Get lost! Are you trying to destroy this mortal world? Get lost now! I'll capture you alive and send you to that bitch, Bodhisattva Great Joy, so that she can suck out your bone marrow." Flustered and exasperated, Buddhafutu could not stop himself from uttering all kinds of dirty words. Lu Bang cupped his fist and bowed to Buddhafutu, then pulled out a golden medallion from his waist and waved it at the group of heavenly generals. "Hunt down Tanlang, the Marquis of Duec province. Capture him alive if you can, but if you can't, kill him and bring back everything he has." The heavenly general, whose body was shrouded in purple flames, answered in a deep voice. Then he gave a loud cry, and the hundreds of golden chariots gave a deafening rumble of thunder as they pierced through the void and fled into the boundless void. The heavenly general let out a long, deep roar, and the sound waves spread across the void in a unique and mysterious way. All the checkpoints the celestial court had set up in the alternate dimensions received his roar at the same time. Above Wuxia, who was flying through the void with the dark Yin celestial tower hovering over his head, a cloud of smoke suddenly flashed across a checkpoint of the celestial court. Tens of thousands of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals in full armor roared as they charged toward Wuxia. Among these heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, the one with the highest cultivation base was a third-tier gold immortal, riding on a white tiger and holding two swords in his hands. Without wasting time talking to Wuxia, he unleashed two beams of purple and green dragon-shaped sword energy that were 1,000 feet long and thrust toward Wuxia. At the same time, he opened his mouth and shot out a beam of yellow light that carried an uneven object that looked like a bezoar toward Wuxia. Third-tier gold immortal? Wuxia smiled faintly. He did not want to waste time with these heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals with low cultivation bases. He threw out a casual punch and shattered the two dragon-shaped sword energy, while dozens of cracks appeared on the two swords in the heavenly general's hands. The heavenly general cried out in pain. Amidst the yellow mist, the thing that looked like a bezoar smashed down towards Wuxia with a refreshing fragrance. The fragrance was intoxicating, and the bezoar itself was heavier than the stars. If someone with a weaker cultivation base were to be smashed by it, his head would definitely be broken and bleeding. Looking at the fragrant object, Wuxia could not help but laugh. "General, are you an ox spirit who has become an immortal? Is this the natal immortal treasure cultivated from the bezoar in your body? Don't tell me you don't have any other treasures with you?" Amidst his laughter, Wuxia snatched the bezoar, which weighed millions of kilograms, and shoved it into his storage ring. The bezoar produced from the body of a third-tier gold immortal ox spirit was a rare and good medicinal ingredient, which could be used in dozens of supreme-grade gold immortal pills. It was an excellent raw material. The heavenly general was so anxious that he almost cried. As Wuxia had said, he had nothing but the two immortal swords. If he were a wealthy demon immortal, how could he be sent by the celestial court to guard the void passage in this remote dimension? The bezoar was indeed his natal immortal treasure. It was refined from a ball of bezoar that he had condensed in his body since he was a child, and was basically half of his life. After being forcefully taken away by Wuxia, the heavenly general's eyes turned red. He threw away the broken immortal sword in his hand, and suddenly transformed into his original form. A giant black bull that was over 1,000 feet tall roared and charged at Wuxia. Wuxia snorted coldly. With a flash, he dodged the desperate black bull spirit and punched him in the ear. A supreme divine power exploded out and blew half of the bull spirit's body into pieces. Wuxia shouted. As a demon immortal, you didn't go to the demon realm. Instead, you joined the celestial court and worked for the celestial court. That's fine, you're just looking for a meal. But you shouldn't have blocked my way. Audiobook habitually came out of Wuqi's sleeve with half of his body, opened his mouth and swallowed the golden immortal bull spirit. Just as he was about to praise the wonderful taste of the beef, a golden light flashed behind him. A purple spear shot over with raging flames and pierced through Audiobook's neck. Audiobook let out a miserable howl. His body twisted violently, golden dragon blood sprayed out, and a large amount of blood even sprinkled on Wuqi's body. The hot blood made Wuqi absent-minded for a moment. The spear almost hit the vital point under Audiobook's reverse scale. Fortunately, Audiobook was also a cunning fellow. With a flash of light in the corner of his eyes, he instinctively straightened his body and avoided the vital point. Even so, the flame attached to the spear almost burned his internal organs, and the golden dragon blood spilled out like cheap tap water. Wuqi's face darkened. He stopped abruptly and pressed his palm on Audiobook's body. One by one, more than a dozen primordial divine runes, which contain the power of life and recovery, were injected into Audiobook's body by Wuqi. Boundless life force rolled over from the void and quickly sank into Audiobook's body, stimulating his wounds to heal quickly. With a flash of golden light, an immortal general clad in a Taoye's heart-covering golden armor, and shrouded in purple flames appeared proudly in front of Wuqi. I'm True Lord Gui, the demon-slaying general who works for Crimson Emperor. Why don't you capture me now? What are you waiting for? Wuqi gave True Lord Gui a look. A fleshly cultivator, a 9th-tier primordial immortal. A demon-slaying general who works for Crimson Emperor must be the top fighting force of the Celestial Court, right? Without saying a word, Wuqi curled up his body and charged toward True Lord Gui, his fists covered in dragon scales raining down on the old man's face. Chapter 807. True Lord Gui, the Crimson Emperor of the Celestial Court, was one of the 9 personal disciples of the great Celestial Emperor, who commanded all spirits in the South Pole to patrol the universe. He was a primordial immortal renowned for his speed among the famous great celestial generals of the Celestial Court. Because he was the personal disciple of the Crimson Emperor, although he had stepped into the realm of primordial, he was still a subject of the Celestial Court, and was willing to serve in the Celestial Court, unlike other primordial immortals who lived in seclusion in the 9 heavens or occupied territories in outer heavenly realms. As the Crimson Emperor's great celestial emperor's demon-slaying general, True Lord Guyi's daily task was to patrol the universe with his men and wander around at will. If he found a target that the Celestial Court needed to deal with, he had the power to kill him at will. When an important member of the Celestial Court summoned him with a secret spell, he had to respond quickly and lead his men to the rescue. True Lord Guyi was famous for his speed, and he even had the Rhino Cloak, an immortal artifact he was proud of. It was made from the feathers of more than 900 kinds of divine and immortal birds famous for their speed, and could increase his speed by more than 100 times. True Lord Guyi's flying speed was already much faster than Wuqi's. With the help of the Rhino Cloak, it only took him a very short time to leave his men behind and catch up with Wuqi. Then he pierced Audiobook's neck with his spear and seriously wounded him. In the face of Wuqi's incoming fist, True Lord Guyi sneered disdainfully. Roaring in a low voice, a cloak that was 1,000 feet long fluttered behind him as he spun gracefully around Wuqi like a ghost. Wuqi's fists could not touch him at all. Instead, it was his natal primordial immortal artifact, the Spear of Flowing Light, that kept stabbing at Wuqi's body, leaving streaks of purple light behind it. The Rhino Cloak could instantly increase True Lord Guyi's speed by more than 100 times. As for the immortal Spear of Light, it was a natal primordial immortal artifact that the Celestial Court spent a great deal of resources to forge for him. It was said that with a thrust of the spear, it could catch up with the passing of time. In the blink of an eye, not only did Wuqi fail to hit True Lord Gu Yi, but True Lord Gu Yi had stabbed him 198 times in a row. Wherever the spear's shadow passed, countless sparks splashed around Wuqi's body, and loud clanging sounds lingered in his ears. Fortunately, he had already activated the evil dragon kill. His entire body was covered with 3 layers of purple gold dragon scales. The dragon scales with extremely high defensive power easily blocked the attack of the flowing light immortal spear. Not even a scratch was left on it. In the blink of an eye, Wuqi suddenly retreated, while True Lord Gu Yi put away his spear in surprise and took a few steps back. The rhino cloak had a limit to the speed boost it gave True Lord Gu Yi, and the brief exchange had consumed 30% of his immortal energy, so he had to retreat and regulate his aura. Otherwise, if he ran out of immortal energy, even a primordial immortal would be at the mercy of others, which was extremely disadvantageous to him in a battle. In particular, True Lord Gu Yi could not accept that his spear could not pierce through the scales on Wuqi's body. He had to think about what was going on. Wuqi took a deep breath and retreated a few miles, staring at True Lord Gu Yi in astonishment. He had thrown more than 3,000 punches at True Lord Gu Yi with all his might, and even if there was a star in front of him, he would have shattered it thousands of times. But the fact that such a fierce attack could not touch True Lord Gu Yi at all had put Wuqi in a difficult position. They stared at each other for a while, and then Wuqi gave him a thumbs up and said in a deep voice, "True Lord Gu Yi? That's fast." True Lord Gu Yi nodded slowly, then slowly took off the Taotai heart-concealing armor, leaving only the cloak on his back. He laughed dryly and said, "Dragon transformation script of dragons? I don't think so. Is it the dragon kill of Diyu's secret palace? The dragon scales on your body can resist the piercing of my light. Hee. Luckily I wasn't hit by your punch, or I would have been in danger." He pointed at the armor he had taken off and said frankly, "I think this immortal armor is no stronger than a piece of paper in front of you. You can pierce through it with just one punch, can't you? It's a hindrance to me, so I might as well fight you with speed. Be careful. My speed can increase by at least 10% after I take it off." Wuqi took a deep breath, grinned coldly and said, 10% of your speed? Don't let me hit you with my punch. You'll die." The two stared at each other like fighting cocks and exchanged a few words, but neither of them had the intention to fight. Wuqi's strength was so great that if he could hit True Lord Gu Yi with his punch, he would definitely be severely injured. But True Lord Gu Yi's speed was so fast that Wuqi couldn't hit him. But because he was too fast, True Lord Gu Yi's spear style was the kind that would leave as soon as he touched it, so he couldn't hurt Wuqi at all. One couldn't hit, and the other couldn't hurt. After staring at each other for a long time, True Lord Gu Yi suddenly let out a long roar, and turned into a purple lightning bolt that shot toward Wuqi's chest. The flowing light immortal spear was right in front of the lightning bolt, and True Lord Gu Yi activated the rhino cloak to deliver the most fatal blow to Wuqi at the fastest speed. True Lord Gu Yi was full of confidence that he could pierce through Wuqi's body with all his strength and speed. The flowing light immortal spear let out a crisp and melodious whistle as it turned blurry. The time around True Lord Gu Yi and the spear began to accelerate, 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, and finally, the time around them accelerated to about 500 times. When the speed reached the limit, the flowing light immortal spear actually accelerated the flow of time, as if it wanted to catch up with the flow of time in the past. A sense of chaotic space-time disorder made Wuqi feel dizzy. How could he catch up with the flow of time? But True Lord Gu Yi's attack did give him such a feeling. He and the lightning bolt that came with the flowing light immortal spear had entered the void, caught up with a point in the past, and stabbed into the body of Wuqi, who was fighting with him just a moment ago. When the spear was about a mile away from Wuqi, a burst of blood suddenly burst out of Wuqi's chest, and a 3-inch deep wound appeared on his chest. Wuqi gave a loud cry. The dark celestial tower over his head sprayed out a large sheet of starlight that surrounded him, and the flow of time around him suddenly skyrocketed by 2,000 times. This was the fastest time that Wuqi could control after stepping into the realm of primordial. The rapid flow of time formed an invisible space-time barrier around Wuqi, tearing apart the connection between the outer space and the time anomaly, and turning the void into an absolute domain that was completely under Wuqi's control. As True Lord Gu Yi rushed into the time domain controlled by Wuqi, the flowing light immortal spear vibrated violently. The difference in the flow of time by 1,500 times had turned into a terrible time oscillation, putting great pressure on the spear. True Lord Gu Yi looked at Wuqi in horror and exclaimed, You can control time? How many times is this? Wuqi ignored True Lord Gu Yi's question. In the time domain controlled by Wuqi, True Lord Gu Yi was like a rabbit caught in a quagmire, no longer able to struggle or jump. The flow of time around Wuqi was 2,000 times faster, while that around True Lord Gu Yi was only 500 times faster. Therefore, Wuqi's movements were much faster than True Lord Gu Yi's. In fact, Wuqi's movements were not as fast as True Lord Gu Yi's, but with the acceleration of time, True Lord Gu Yi could not see each of Wuqi's movements clearly. He performed an incantation gesture with both hands. Immediately, dozens of vicious curses that could weaken a person's body and make it difficult for him to move flew out from between his fingers, followed by curses that could devour blood essence, souls, flesh and internal organs, bones, and immortal energy that could burn away. A series of vicious curses from the primordial Tao of divinity shot out in the form of plumes of black smoke, attaching themselves to True Lord Gu Yi. Although they were both primordial immortals, Wuqi's curses had caused great damage to True Lord Gu Yi. His body was rapidly rotting and deforming, and his hand could not hold on to the spear for a tenth of a second. The spear flew out of his hand amidst a dazzling trail of purple flame, but was pulled far away by the time vortex conjured by Wuqi. Not sure if he could kill True Lord Gu Yi, Wuqi dared not use many of his trump cards. Instead, he kept attacking True Lord Gu Yi with various spells from the used Directorate of Celestials, the power of the primordial Tao of divinity, and the power of the primordial divine runes. Countless curses and divine runes poured out of True Lord Gu Yi's body. His overall strength was rapidly weakened, and yellow blisters began to appear on his face, from which a copious amount of pus kept gushing out. Feeling excruciating pain all over his body, True Lord Gu Yi bellowed furiously. Cultivating both fleshly body and magic? Your cultivation base is already at the level of Supreme Oracle? Otherwise, how could your curses hurt me? The purple flame around True Lord Gu Yi towered into the sky. It was a wisp of pure young heavenly flame that came from beyond the 33 heavens. It possessed great power, and the pure young thunder tribulation that immortals attracted when breaking through to the next realm was actually condensed from this kind of heavenly flame. As soon as the heavenly flame appeared, the power of Wuqi's curses was immediately weakened by 30%. Chanting the Tao League's demon-subduing mantra, True Lord Gu Yi's rhino cloak transformed into a beam of green light, wrapped around his body, and brought him flying away. Even with his eyesight, Wuqi could not see how he disappeared. Almost instinctively, Wuqi made a grabbing motion. A subtle aura rushed out of his palm, enveloping the rhino cloak with his thievery energy. Then he quietly activated the myriad harmonization grand magic, sending a wisp of pure energy essence into Wuqi's body. Wuqi felt his body lighten, and his speed suddenly increased by more than 30 times. Not only did he steal the essence of the rhino spirit cloak, but he also absorbed a part of True Lord Gu Yi's cultivation base. With a loud laugh, Wuqi's speed suddenly skyrocketed. He turned into a black beam and sped away. With the help of Dark Ean's celestial tower, Wuqi suddenly caught up with True Lord Gu Yi, shoulder to shoulder. Before True Lord Gu Yi could react, Wuqi's elbow struck him hard in the ribs. The tremendous force exploded like a bomb. A loud noise rang out from True Lord Gu Yi's fleshly body, and a dozen of his ribs were smashed by Wuqi's elbow. Compared to the body that Wuqi had tempered with the true body of heaven and earth scripture, dragon transformation script, and dragon kill, True Lord Gu Yi's body, which focused on speed, was still too weak. They were both primordial immortals, but if Wuqi's body was a steel ingot, True Lord Gu Yi's was a piece of tofu. The sharp pain made True Lord Gu Yi shriek hoarsely. Glaring angrily at Wuqi, he swung his palm toward Wuqi's forehead. True Lord Gu Yi thrust his palm out, causing the surrounding void to collapse with a boom. A pitch-black crack in the void transformed into a sharp blade light, and went straight toward Wuqi's forehead. Wuqi grabbed True Lord Guyi's rhino cloak and kicked him. The tremendous force sent him flying far away, but Wuqi had the cloak, which kept twitching in his hand. True Lord Guyi let out a long cry and gave Wuqi a venomous glare. Then he summoned his light flow immortal spear and sped away in a flash in a beam of flame. As a body cultivator and an immortal who focused on speed, True Lord Guyi was completely dominated by Wuqi. In the end, he could only flee helplessly after being severely wounded. Then he heard True Lord Guyi cry out, "Just you wait, Tan Lang, Marquis of East Sea Province. I won't let you get away with this." Sneering, Wuqi swallowed the rhino cloak, turned and left. Before leaving, Wuqi pressed his palm down and smashed the outpost of the Celestial Court in front of him, sending tens of thousands of soldiers and generals flying thousands of miles away with their bones broken and tendons torn. Chapter 808. Up in midair, Lu Bang and his company stood foolishly on the flying ship, waiting for news from True Lord Guyi. After a long time, Han Xian paced impatiently on the bow of the ship. When Lu Bang saw the restless Han Xian, he smiled confidently and said, "Don't worry, True Lord Guyi has stepped into the realm of primordial 10,000 years ago, and he became a primordial expert through his own arduous cultivation. That boy did not achieve it by virtue of virtue. All the immortals in the universe know that a primordial expert who achieved it by virtue of virtue is at least 30% weaker than a true primordial expert. That boy is dead for sure." Han Xian's face darkened and he said nothing, while Zhang Liang and Xiao He did not look happy either. Even if Wuqi was killed, they would have lost all their faces. How could the proud Han Xian and his company swallow the humiliation of being robbed by Wuqi? Not being able to give Wuqi a few slashes with their own hands was one of their biggest regrets. Just as they were struggling, a golden light flashed before their eyes, and True Lord Guyi, with half of his body caved in, appeared in front of them angrily. Before Lu Bang could say anything, True Lord Guyi roared furiously, "Why didn't King of Han tell me that guy is a freak who cultivates both magic and fleshly body? It's fine if he is just a supreme oracle or a human warrior from Hungmeng Panga Heaven, but if both of them work together, it would be easy to deal with him." Lu Bang and his company were stunned as they looked at True Lord Guyi, who was covered in dust and had a large part of his body caved in. True Lord Guyi scolded Lu Bang angrily. If Wuqi were just an ordinary supreme oracle, he was confident that he could pierce Wuqi's heart with a spear. If Wuqi were just an ordinary human warrior from Hungmeng Panga Heaven, with his terrifying speed, True Lord Guyi could still beat Wuqi to a pulp. But Wuqi was a freak who combined both of them. Not only did he possess incredible physical strength, but he could also control the flow of time, which limited True Lord Guyi's greatest advantage, his incredible speed. Therefore, True Lord Guyi could only suffer defeat in front of Wuqi. A body cultivator like True Lord Guyi, who focused on speed, would have a great advantage if he were to fight a supreme oracle or a human warrior from Hungmeng Panga Heaven. With his insane speed, even if he couldn't defeat the enemy, he would be able to tie them down. As long as the Sky Patrol army that he led arrived, thousands of people would be able to set up the Scarlet Scorching Sky Demon Vanquishing formation that was created by the Scarlet Tharch, and they would be able to kill the enemy. But a man like Wuqi, who cultivated both fleshly body and magic, and possessed a supreme-grade supreme tower that could control time, was his absolute nemesis. Suppressing his speed by controlling the flow of time, and then dealing a fatal blow to True Lord Guyi with his absolute advantage in strength, was definitely the enemy that True Lord Guyi feared the most. But there were a few freaks who cultivated both fleshly body and magic in Diyu Dynasty. They were now the top figures of Diyu's Directorate of Celestials and the Secret Palace, and revered elders of the Secret Palace. They did not leave Liangzhu easily, and True Lord Guyi never dreamed that he would run into one of them. Seeing True Lord Guyi beaten to such a state, Lu Bang was so scared that his claws went numb. Unlike Lu Bang, an unfavored son, True Lord Guyi was one of Crimson Emperor's 9 most capable personal disciples, and one of the 9 famous evil-slaying generals of the Celestial Court. Unlike Lu Bang, who was an immortal king with a title but no real power, True Lord Guyi's army of Celestial Court consisted of 3 celestial patrolling armies, each of which had 9 armies and 18 battalions of celestial soldiers and celestial generals, with a total of 1 billion soldiers. Because Liu Bang had provided the wrong information, true Lord Gu Yi was seriously wounded. At the thought that Crimson Emperor might be angry because of this, Liu Bang had an impulse to pass out. A fierce gleam flashed in Liu Bang's eyes, and he even had the thought of killing true Lord Gu Yi. If not for the fact that true Lord Gu Yi was not someone he could deal with, he would have killed him by now. Staring blankly at the seriously wounded true Lord Gu Yi, Liu Bang suddenly cried out in a hoarse voice, Senior brother Gu Yi, please listen to me." Sobbing bitterly, Liu Bang threw his arms around true Lord Gu Yi and burst into tears. "Senior brother, please listen to me. You can't blame me for this." Sob, the 3 primordial immortals sent by the celestial court to the mortal world, the 3 Buddhas sent by the Buddhist League, and a fiend immortal sent by the great fiend emperor of the fiend realm. They were all killed by that boy. But I really didn't know he had such a strong strength before this. True Lord Gu Yi shuddered. He wished he could stab Liu Bang to death with his light stream immortal spear, even though Liu Bang was his master's son. Wuxia killed 7 primordial immortals alone? Why didn't you tell me earlier? What a bastard. Are you afraid you won't die soon enough? True Lord Gu Yi wanted to cry but had no tears as he stroked his injured ribs. An ordinary primordial immortal would not be able to recover from such an injury without spending a few periods of hard cultivation. True Lord Gu Yi had a good master who could eat all kinds of supreme-grade primordial immortal pills like sweets. It would only take him a few months to fully recover. But he had the Rhino Cloak, the cloak that could increase his speed by 100 times in a short period of time. It was extremely difficult to gather the feathers of hundreds of divine and immortal birds that were famous for their speed, and some of them even came from the mount of a Taoist patriarch, Crimson Emperor's master, who was also one of the backers of the celestial court. It took Crimson Emperor a great favor to pluck 3 of the longest tail feathers from that mount, whose cultivation base was not much weaker than Crimson Emperor's. Yet, Wuxia had snatched away such an important treasure. It pained true Lord Gu Yi so much that he wanted to add hundreds of holes to Liu Bang's body. Golden ripples rolled down from the sky, including heavenly flowers, golden lotuses, golden lamps, golden bells, and many other unusual phenomena. A gentle and mysterious aura enveloped the mortal world. The real almighty experts of Taoist League and Buddhist League had arrived. Nothing could go wrong in the mortal world. On average, there was a chance to safely break through to the realm of primordial every half an eon, so this was a place where nothing could go wrong. True Lord Gu Yi, Liu Bang, and the others dropped to their knees at the same time, bowing deeply and not daring to be negligent. Endless immortal energy and Buddhist energy swept across the void, replacing the sweating Buddha Futu and forcibly restoring the laws of heaven and earth that were about to disintegrate. A brand new planet and a satellite emerged out of thin air, looking no different from the original planet and satellite. Tens of thousands of small human tribes, each with a population of only 1,000 or so, were thrown into the lush jungles and flat grasslands of this new planet. These human tribes, who were still in the primitive stage, had no idea that they had changed their living environment. Beaming with joy, they began a new cycle of life on this planet. Whether it was the almighty experts of Taoist League or Buddhist League, they all sat cross-legged on lotus thrones of different colors. A total of 72 lotus thrones hovered in the void, with 72 almighty experts of Taoist League and Buddhist League whispering to each other. The name Tanlang, Marquis of Isi Province, appeared vaguely in the void, and then disappeared without a trace. Wuxia did not know what had happened in the void after he left, nor did he know that he had been listed by the higher-ups of the Celestial Court and the Buddhist League, and that the Celestial Court and the Buddhist League had issued a bounty against him at the same time. He had Kunwu swords and mastered the fiend-slaying sword formation, and he deserved to die. On top of that, he had killed 7 primordial experts, and this was what he had done when he had just stepped into the realm of primordial. How could they not punish him? If they did not kill such a man as soon as possible, would they allow him to continue to cause greater losses to the Celestial Court and the Buddhist League? Even the 9 fiend emperors and 72 fiend kings of the fiend realm had issued a bounty against Wuxia. If the immortals of the Fiend League could kill Wuqi or his relatives and friends, they would be rewarded with a territory of different sizes in the Fiend realm, depending on how important these people were. Wuqi did not know about these things, so he flew back to Pangu continent in a good mood. Along the way, he devoured and fused the rhino cloak, fusing its existence into his divine soul. He now had the terrible ability to speed up 100 times in a short time, which was definitely a freakish ability. With his current strength, if he could speed up 100 times in a short time, he was confident that he could even threaten an 8th-tier primordial expert. Now that he had stepped into the realm of 9th-tier primordial, obtained the complete legacy of Scroll of Stealing, and possessed the first wisp of innate thievery energy, Wuqi no longer needed to worry about his future cultivation base. According to the shadowy figure's experience, if Wuqi kept going step by step, he would be able to step into the realm of Dao breaking in just a few decades, and the realm of Dao fusing in just a few hundred years. He no longer needed to worry about his own cultivation base. He needed to improve the cultivation base of the people around him. Lu Chengfeng was Wuqi's best brother, the most reliable and capable man around him. His cultivation base was so low that Wuqi was too embarrassed to mention it. Another example was Yan Bugui. Although he had changed his cultivation base to the true body of heaven and earth scripture, his cultivation base had not even reached the level of first Panga heaven. Lord Xiansheng, Catfish, Ao Buzin, Goldhorn, Silverhorn, Goldfeather, Silverfeather, even Patriarch Jiang Yun and the other old immortals, the many disciples of Underhand Sect, Supremacy 3 Flame, his friend in adversity, and Huang Liang, a loyal subordinate whom he had recruited along the way. What kind of overall strength did they have? Although there were many of them, their overall strength was so weak that it made Wuqi's heart ache. More importantly, although Princess Zhonglu had awakened her primordial bloodline, and even formed the golden body of the god of Scourge, her cultivation base was only about the same as a lower-tier gold immortal. By relying on the bizarre and unpredictable primordial divine power, she could deal with some weak enemies. But as his lover, if he could not elevate her to the realm of primordial, Wuqi would not feel at ease leaving her alone in the East Sea province. What kind of people had Wuqi offended now? He had thoroughly offended the Lord Buddha, Amitba, brutally beaten true Lord Gu-yi, robbed Liu Bang until he was left with nothing but his underpants, and thoroughly offended the Red Emperor, one of the 5 celestial emperors of the 5 directions. Now that he had killed King Tangqiu in public, needless to say, King Baishan was now thinking about him. If he could not instigate Emperor Haozuan to kill King Baishan, he would have to be careful of King Baishan's revenge. Counting with his fingers, the whole world was filled with his enemies. I'm such a failure as a human being. Why do I suddenly have so many enemies? With a wry smile on his face, he patted the empty dark Een celestial tower, turned it back into a clump of chaotic energy, and swallowed it back into his stomach. After thinking for a long time, he sighed helplessly and said, "You Xiong Plain, oh you Xiong Plain, I'll have to rely on you. Whether I, Wuqi, can turn over a new leaf and become a phoenix, all depends on you." Wuqi shuddered at the thought of the endless natural energy beneath Yu Xiong Plain, and the enormous spirit cave, which was said to be Saint Panga's heart. He did not need a lot, but just 1/1000th of the natural energy in that spirit cave could produce at least 3 to 5 primordial experts and a large group of gold immortals. Wuqi was not greedy. Really, he would be satisfied if he could produce 3 to 5 primordial experts. 3 plus 5. Excluding himself, there were at most 8 people. He was really not greedy. Chapter 809. Wuqi was struck dumb. How could he be the 79th person to do such a stupid thing? If I may ask, what about the 78 seniors? He asked dryly. Wuqi's scalp went numb at the mention of the grand sacrifice to heaven and earth and the human emperor's banquet. But now that he had plenty of experience, he knew he would not suffer too much during the banquet. With Emperor Haozuan's decree, Wuqi could bring no more than 10,000 relatives and maids to live in Liangzhu with him, as the king of East Sea's upper-grade prefecture. The 2 palaces chosen by Dayu's eunuchs for Wuqi had a good location and scenery. In total, the palaces had more than 30 halls and hundreds of ancillary buildings. They were not far from each other, located on both sides of a great river, and connected by a stone bridge. Dozens of manors were dotted around the palaces. No matter how hard he racked his brains, he could not imagine how powerful this formation was, nor could he imagine how much resources it would take to construct it. Apart from Yuxiong Plain, where the natural energy was limitless, he could not think of any other place that could support the energy consumption of such a formation. Perhaps even a first-tier primordial immortal would be killed by the power unleashed by such a formation. Wouldn't it? The king of East Sea's prefecture? Wuqi was struck dumb. He was conferred the title of king just like that? And a hereditary king of Diyu's prefecture, one of the 4 grades of mountain, water, prefecture, and city? Although it was the lowest rank, 9 state king, it was still an upper-class state king among the upper and lower-ranked 9 nobles. This meant that he had the direct jurisdiction of 2 other large states. After hesitating for a while, Emperor Haozuan shook his head and said, "The king of East Sea's prefecture king need not intervene in the matter of King Baishan. I'll talk to him." With these 2 palaces of Emperor Haozuan, Wuqi was qualified to bring a certain number of relatives and subordinates to live in Liangzhu. The palaces and manors outside Liangzhu could not be bought with money. Apart from the natives who had lived here for generations, they could only be bought with rewards from Emperor Haozuan. Owning their own palaces and manors outside of Liangzhu city meant that they had the right to stay in Liangzhu city, which meant that they had become the true ministers of Diyu. Beads of cold sweat were breaking out from Wuqi's body. He wanted to scream, but no sound came out from his mouth. After taking out the medallion that allowed him to see Emperor Haozuan at any time, Wuqi showed it to the old oracle. The old oracle waved his hand, and a few black-clad eunuchs came to greet Wuqi and led him slowly into the palace. Emperor Haozuan burst out laughing, nodded, and said, "No matter what, you have done a great service." Pass down the decree. You are now the Marquis of East Sea Province, the 9th grade upper grade king of East Sea Province. In addition to the fiefdom of the East Sea Province, 2 provinces near the East Sea Province will be chosen as the territories under the direct jurisdiction of the king of East Sea Province. Emperor Haozuan was obviously very satisfied with what Wuqi had done in the past few days. Proud of himself, he clapped his hands and said with a smile, "I'm very happy that the king of East Sea Province has done such a great service. Servants, prepare a feast." "That's all." Emperor Haozuan jumped to his feet in surprise and cried out, "You killed the 7 primordial immortals?" There was still a month and a half before the next grand sacrificial ceremony, and Wuqi had to be there on time to complete the legal formalities to confer him the title of king of East Sea Province. Take Bo Zhongfu, the current prefecture overseer of Zhong Province, for example. Although he was the prefecture overseer of Zhong Province, he also had his own mansion in Liangzhu, and he was considered a minister. Laughing strangely, the old oracle raised his finger and said, "Marquis is one of the 79 Diyu oracles who broke through the realm of oracles and came to the imperial palace. Well, he is also the only one who is not injured. Cultivating both fleshly body and magic is indeed extraordinary." As soon as he emerged from the void, dozens of terrible divine senses immediately locked onto Wuqi. 12 dark supreme towers appeared silently around Wuqi, completely sealing off space and time, and the natural energy disappeared without a trace in that instant. The space around Wuqi had become an absolute vacuum, and even space and time no longer existed. This was just the power on the surface. Wuqi had not seen any white-robed oracles from the secret palace. The secret palace was the place where the most powerful forces of Diyu were gathered, and the craziest, and strongest monsters of Diyu were all hiding in it. Glancing around, Wuqi could not tell that Liangzhu had such an abnormal defense. He only knew that the imperial palace was extremely well defended, but he did not expect that the imperial palace was so heavily guarded. As a primordial immortal who had just become a primordial immortal, he was almost seriously injured by the aura of these oracles on duty. This was too outrageous. The old oracle shook his head and laughed. "It's nothing. The shortest one has been lying in bed for half a year, and the longest one has only rested for 3 years. Well, when Marquis has his own clan in the future, I'll have to remind my children that even if they have a divine cultivation base, they should not come to the imperial palace like this. Not only will they frighten the oracles on duty, they will also frighten themselves." That's not good. After hurriedly arranging the complicated affairs of the territory, Wuqi immediately announced that he would go into seclusion to stabilize his cultivation base. Then, together with Princess Zhonglu, they went into the underground palace under the palace, which was specially built for cultivation. A deep bell rang out in the imperial palace. Tens of thousands of black-robed oracles of Diyu rose into the sky from all over Liangzhu. Their terrible auras merged into one, slowly rising from the ground like a great mountain. A terrible pressure that could destroy everything came pressing down on Wuqi silently, making his bones creak. He almost could not withstand the pressure, and was about to be completely crushed. A formation with a circumference of nearly 100 million miles? Was this still the old, closed, rigid, and lifeless Liangzhu? The speed of the city's reaction surprised Wuqi. Even if a dozen primordial experts were to invade it at the same time, they would be killed in an instant, wouldn't they? At the very least, he could see large runes and patterns of formations beginning to flash on the ground with the imperial palace as the center. It was a terrible formation, nearly 100 million miles in circumference, laid out with the whole of Liangzhu as its center. He never dreamed that Liangzhu's defense was so terrible. He just wanted to save time, so he came out from not far from the imperial palace. But he never thought that his appearance would cause such a huge reaction. This is the Kunwu divine weapon given by the sacred emperor, Wuqi explained hurriedly. It has nothing to do with me. In the great hall, Wuqi saw Emperor Haozuan again. He was sitting on the throne as usual, dressed in the same clothes. Does this Emperor Haozuan sit there all year round without eating, drinking, bathing, and never go out to pay his respects? Wuqi wondered maliciously. Leaving behind two blood-draining celestial fiends to confuse the enemies, Wuqi and Princess Zhonglu plunged into the depths of Yuxiong Plain, 100 million miles beneath it. As a result, the enormous pressure dissipated in an instant, and all the oracles returned to their posts. The huge runes and diagrams on the ground were extinguished one by one, and the deep, powerful ringing of bells faded away. The old oracle grinned, nodded at Wuqi, and said, "Congratulations on your success in your cultivation base, Marquis of East Sea Province. Well, you've really reached the realm of supreme oracles, and your fleshly body has reached the realm of Hongmengpanga heaven. No wonder you didn't die just now. Cultivating both fleshly body and magic is really good." Wuqi hurriedly bowed his head and bowed respectfully to Emperor Haozuan. After bidding farewell to the emperor, Wuqi followed the few eunuchs out of the hall. Wuqi swallowed a mouthful of saliva and laughed dryly. The manor was 100,000 miles away from Liangzhu, a distance that could be covered by a single step for someone like Wuqi, and according to Diyu's classification, it was still in the outskirts of Liangzhu, an excellent location. The dozens of manors covered a total of millions of acres of fertile farmland, and produced a bountiful annual yield. Together with the manors, hundreds of villages and towns where the land was planted were given to Wuqi, and all the people in them became Wuqi's subjects. Just as Wuqi was about to be crushed by the tremendous pressure, a black-robed oracle suddenly appeared on the supreme tower facing Wuqi. The white-haired old oracle gave Wuqi a blank look, carefully distinguishing his appearance and aura, then slowly raised his right hand and waved gently. Emperor Haozuan burst into laughter. He made no secret of his admiration for Wuqi. With a smile, he asked Wuqi to tell him everything in detail, and he kept asking Wuqi about the details. When Wuqi told him that he was chased by true Lord Gu Yi on his way back, and that he had severely wounded the man with a single blow, the emperor cheered and rewarded Wuqi with 2 palaces and dozens of manors outside Liangzhu. The eunuchs of Diyu dynasty were very efficient. Just as Emperor Haozuan was conferring Wuqi as the king of East Sea Prefecture, the imperial edict and medallions for Wuqi's promotion had been prepared, including the title deeds of 2 palaces and dozens of manors, all of which had been handed over to Wuqi. Moreover, these eunuchs told Wuqi that his promotion was a special edict, and that he would have to attend the next heaven and earth sacrificial ceremony held by Diyu dynasty, for he would have to pray to heaven and earth, announce his promotion to all the ghosts and deities, and receive the human emperor's banquet. After a brief pause, Wuqi hurriedly bowed and thanked Emperor Haozuan. The power of the stars, natural energy, and Pangu's sacred energy poured down like a waterfall from the 9 heavens, fusing into Emperor Haozuan's body. Emperor Haozuan squinted at Wuqi with a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. Congratulations, Marquis of Yi Prefecture. Well, how did you break through the path of ingress in such a short time? When he said that, Emperor Haozuan's face turned ferocious, and the armrest of his throne was crushed to pieces. As soon as he said the word banquet, Wuqi's face turned pale, and the emperor's face turned extremely unsightly. He quickly corrected himself and said, I think the king of Yi Prefecture is tired, so you'd better go back and rest quickly. Well, if that king of Han dares to come back, the king of Yi Prefecture will have to keep a close eye on him. As for King Baishan, Wuqi bowed to Emperor Haozuan and told him what he had done in the past few days. Of course, he mainly mentioned that he had killed 7 primordial immortals and destroyed a small world in the mortal world, but avoided mentioning that he had robbed Buddha-Futu, Liu Bang, and the others. After all, it was not a glorious thing to do, was it not? About a mile above the gate of Diyu Imperial Palace, a piece of blue sky about 10 feet in circumference suddenly collapsed, and Wuqi strode out of it. Chapter 8:10. With the help of the endless natural energy in Yuxiong Plain, the people around Wuqi were undergoing earth-shaking transformations. Meanwhile, Princess Zhang Li's understanding of the primordial Tao of divinity was constantly being transmitted to Wuqi, comparing it with everything Wuqi knew, deepening their understanding of the heavenly Tao. Patriarch Jiangyun and the other orthodox immortals were solemnly listening to Wuqi teach them the innate pure Yang universal scripture, a primordial scripture from the sovereign of myriad immortal alliance. At the same time, wisps of the divine flame of great tranquility kept flickering around them, injecting an enormous amount of natural energy into their bodies. They did not need to spend any effort to absorb the energy to improve their cultivation base, as all they needed to do was to comprehend the boundless magic Wuqi taught them. Naturally, no one cared about that, and no one would notice it. But Wuqi was crazily plundering the natural energy in this boundless ocean of natural energy. It was like someone drinking a small mouthful of water from the Pacific Ocean. No one noticed what he was doing underground. There was still a month and a half before Wuqi would participate in the ritual. In other words, with the 2,000-fold acceleration of time that Wuqi could control, he had 3,000 months to cultivate in seclusion. 3,000 months, or 250 years. This was the main reason why Diyu forbade any immortals from getting close to the area 10 billion miles around Yuxiong Plain without permission. As long as any immortal sneaked into Yuxiong Plain and entered the depths, he would be able to use the endless natural energy to cultivate as much as he wanted. However, the amount of natural energy under Yuxiong Plain was too much to count, and Diyu had no way to monitor its flow. Therefore, to prevent any immortals from using the natural energy to strengthen themselves, Diyu simply sealed off Yuxiong Plain. Unless it was an envoy of the celestial court like Liu Bang, he would kill any immortal who dared to approach Yuxiong Plain. 100 million miles below Yuxiong Plain, the concentration of natural energy and Pangu's sacred energy had reached a level that almost drove Wuqi crazy. Had he ever seen crystallized natural energy and Pangu's sacred energy? The underground here was filled with such perverted existences. In the liquid spiritual energy sea, there were energy crystals of different sizes, tens of thousands of miles in radius. Some of them had been compressed and condensed to the extreme. The energy contained in them was so strong that the leaking energy waves could even distort the surrounding space. Only the supreme oracles of Diyu had the privilege to enter the Yuxiong Plains at any time and absorb the natural energy and Pangu's sacred energy here. All the major clans in Liangzhu had supreme oracles, so they always had many experts in their clans. This had also maintained the status and power of Diyu clan on Pangu continent. Now that Wuqi was also a supreme priest, and had been conferred the title of king of the Yi Prefecture, even if he was discovered to be frantically plundering the spiritual energy underground, the outsiders would just turn a blind eye to it. As the divine flame of great tranquility slowly fused into their bodies, Supremacy 3 Flame, who was standing next to them, was surrounded by a green glass-like flame. Supremacy 3 Flame was very talented when it came to playing with fire, and he had already begun to master the magical ability of this innate divine flame. In the future, Wuqi's underhand sect would certainly have another expert in alchemy. Wuqi and Princess Zhonglu sat cross-legged on a purple crystal that measured more than 100,000 miles in diameter, their bodies crazily absorbing the natural energy around them like black holes. Meanwhile, 108 Kunwu swords formed the fiend-slaying sword formation to devour the surrounding natural energy, purifying it and injecting it directly into their bodies. Wuqi and Princess Zhongli's divine souls were closely connected, and Wuqi was constantly transmitting all the insights he had gained after stepping into the realm of primordial to Princess Zhonglu, consuming his own blood essence and divine soul to forcibly improve the realm and cultivation base of Princess Zhongli's divine soul. At the bottom of Dark Yin Celestial Tower, Wuqi had opened up a herb garden that measured hundreds of thousands of miles in circumference. A few blood-draining celestial fiends were carefully taking care of the various herbs planted in it. From time to time, Princess Zhonglu would stop her cultivation and come to the herb garden to help. With the help of her divine power, the spirit herbs were growing very well, and the ingredients needed to concoct some basic life-prolonging pills were plentiful. In this way, the millions of soldiers of the East Sea no longer had to worry about their lifespans running out when they left Dark Yin Celestial Tower. Even emissaries of the Celestial Court like Liu Bang were under Dayu's surveillance at all times. They could use the rich natural energy above ground to cultivate, but if they dared to sneak into the ground, they would immediately be violently suppressed by Dayu. With Wu Qi's efforts, his power was growing rapidly. In hundreds of huge halls, millions of soldiers of the East Sea were undergoing brutal training. With the cruel physical training and constant brainwashing, Wu Qi was confident that when these soldiers left Dark Yin Celestial Tower and ended their 250-year training, they would be ready to die for him at any time. Among these soldiers, many had excellent aptitudes, and the cultivation technique of the human race was the fastest. In just a dozen years, some of them had broken through the realm of Panga Heaven, which shocked even Wu Qi. Suddenly, Wu Qi understood why Dayu could cultivate a large number of powerful soldiers and oracles in a short period of time when he needed them. If it were not for the fact that the lifespan of the human race limited this method of accelerating time, perhaps Dayu would have become a place where primordial immortals roamed, and gold immortals were as common as dogs. Would anyone care if there was a drop of water missing from the Pacific Ocean? Of course, although the number of soldiers in Wu Qi's Dark Yin Celestial Tower was slightly larger, which clan of Dayu did not secretly train more powerful private armies for themselves? Not to mention others, Gao alone had millions of soldiers under his command, all of whom had been approved by the human emperor. So, how did he train these millions of soldiers? Everyone was well aware of this. Lord Xiansheng, Catfish, the Dragon King of the East Sea, and many other aquatic demons, as long as they had the potential to cultivate into true dragons, had all gathered around a clone. The clone was practicing the dragon transformation script, teaching them all the mystic arts of dragons. Ao Buzan was sitting lazily off to one side, cultivating on his own while giving them some advice from time to time. Every word he said was just right, awakening the hearts of these aquatic demons like the morning bell. Under the guidance of Wu Qi, and having inherited the complete primordial Tao of divinity, Princess Zhonglu had a bright and smooth path in front of her. She only needed to spend a little time and stride down this path, and then she would be able to advance to the realm of primordial, which was the level of the ancient gods, so-called innate ancient gods. All she lacked was the accumulation of divine power, and that was what Wu Qi's cultivation technique was best at. On top of that, Wu Qi had the myriad harmonization grand magic, which not only allowed him to devour foreign objects to nourish himself, but could also reverse the cultivation technique and transfer all of his energy to Princess Zhonglu. An enormous amount of energy essence and the enlightenment of the heavenly Tao were constantly injected into Princess Zhongli's body. Her level of understanding of the primordial Tao of divinity was steadily rising, and her understanding of the primordial Tao of divinity was getting deeper and deeper. The various mystic arts of the primordial Tao of divinity she mastered were also getting stronger and stronger. Inside Dark Yin Celestial Tower, a Apart from the two blood-draining celestial gods, some of the other 16 blood-draining celestial gods had taken the form of Wuxia, sitting cross-legged in various halls of the tower with solemn expressions, teaching Wuxia the various scriptures of the primordial Tao of divinity to different targets. Wuxia opened his interstitial world. Chaotic energy poured out wildly, plundering the energy crystals that were drifting and colliding with each other like mountains. Oh heavens, there were tens of thousands of miles of crystalline energy and Panga's sacred energy. Wuqi's eyes turned green as he excitedly swallowed one energy crystal after another into his interstitial world. At the same time, he kept exercising the myriad harmonization grand magic to absorb the vast and endless energy around him. The cultivation techniques of the human race were easy to master, and with the help of the Supreme Tower, perhaps in just 3 to 5 days in the outside world, you could cultivate a large number of gold immortals. It was no wonder you could fight against the celestial court for so many years without falling. Even the human wave attack was enough to give the celestial court a headache. It took eons of time for a gold immortal to cultivate, but you could cultivate gold immortal warriors and oracles like leeks in the field, harvesting them in just 3 to 5 days. The difference in their combat potential was too obvious. Lord Buddha's Great Light Indestructible Amitabha treasure scripture contained the supreme divine ability of the Buddhist League, the Great Light Amitabha Universal Enlightenment. It was the divine ability that Lord Buddha had once used on the severely wounded Buddha Phutu. It allowed him to inject his own cultivation base, magic power, and blood essence into the target's body. It was not enough to describe what Wuqia was feeling now as a mouse falling into a rice barn. He produced Dark Een Celestial Tower and plundered the surrounding energy to his heart's content. But it did not reduce at all. All the disciples of Underhand Sect, all the people around Wuqia, and the million-strong army carefully selected from the East Sea province were hidden in Dark Een Celestial Tower by Wuqia. As for the disciples of Underhand Sect, the disciples of the human race were gathered in a great hall, listening to the teachings of various mystic arts, while the disciples of the demon race were being taught the mystic arts of the demon race. The shadowy figure had given Wuqia the complete inheritance of Scroll of Stealing, which contained the natal divine abilities of all the great ancient demons, so it was appropriate to teach them to the disciples of the demon race. Some of the demon disciples Wuqia had recruited actually had the faint bloodline of ancient demons. In just a dozen years they had awakened their bloodline, and naturally, their cultivation bases had improved by leaps and bounds. The momentum of their rapid progress was astonishing. From time to time, Wuqia would personally enlighten Lu Qingfeng, Yin Bugui, and those close to him, forcibly improving their cultivation bases. In just a few years he had brought Lu Qingfeng, Yin Bugui, and others to the realm of heaven immortals, and after that, their cultivation bases improved by leaps and bounds. If it were not for the fact that Du was conservative and traditional, and only guarded Pangu continent as his territory, the celestial court would have been destroyed by Du a long time ago. The sticky liquid energy and Panga's sacred energy rushed into Dark Een Celestial Tower, catching the millions of people in the tower off guard, and drowning them in the liquid energy. Countless people were thrown and rolled around by the torrent of energy, and some even screamed for help. The Dark Een Celestial Tower was plunged into chaos in an instant. But soon, these people found out what exactly was pouring into the tower. Before the soldiers of East Sea Province could figure it out, Patriarch Jiang Yin, Lord Xiansheng, Supremacy 3 Flame, and the other immortals had already exclaimed and sat down cross-legged in ecstasy, entering into a deep state of cultivation. Chapter 8:11. After spending a month and a half cultivating in seclusion underground, Wuqia returned to the surface alone to participate in the deadly heaven-worshipping ceremony, where Emperor Haozuan officially announced that he was conferred the title of King of East Sea Prefecture. The fact that he had single-handedly killed 7 primordial immortals had been confirmed, and both the Celestial Court and the Buddhist League had officially sent an official document to Du. Therefore, the promotion of Wuqia was unanimously approved by all the civil and military officials in the imperial court. Except for King Baishan, whose whereabouts were unknown, no one objected to Wuqia's promotion. The slightly interesting news was that Du, as usual, ignored the official documents sent by the Celestial Court and the Buddhist League. After Liu Bang left the imperial palace, Emperor Haozuan rewarded 2 official scrolls made of rare materials, such as the silk of 10,000-year-old heavenly silkworms, to a chief eunuch. The chief eunuch, who was in charge of Emperor Haozuan's daily meals, happily made the 2 scrolls into a pair of fine socks. This was Diyu's attitude. After the protests from the Celestial Court and the Buddhist League, Diyu had returned to his original track, moving forward according to the old tradition. Wuqi held a banquet in his palace, inviting Gao, King Yufeng, and a group of people close to him to drink for 3 days and 3 nights. After that, he went back to his secluded cultivation. The excuse he gave to the public was that he had just stepped into the realm of Supreme Oracle and needed to stabilize his cultivation base while studying some supreme mystic arts provided by the secret palace. It was a real excuse, for after learning that Wuqi had broken through the realm of Supreme Oracle, the first master of the secret palace had given Wuqi countless mystic arts, each of which was extremely exquisite and powerful. Meanwhile, Liu Bang stayed quietly in Chang'e Palace, drinking and making merry every day and never running around again. Wuqi had assigned some soldiers to keep an eye on him in shifts. Just like that, the days went by. In a great hall about 100 miles long and wide in Dark Ean's celestial tower, the light curtain constructed by Princess Zhonglu, which was a combination of 49,000 ancient runes and primordial Tao of divinity, kept vibrating and producing dull, loud noises. Wuqi was bare-chested, his hair disheveled as he laughed and waved his fists to clash with a silver halberd and a black knife that were thrusting toward him. The man was Lord Xiansheng, who was holding a silver halberd that kept drawing dazzling silver rainbows in the air. After hundreds of years of hard cultivation, the mystic arts of dragons that Wuqi had taught him, and the fact that Wuqi had forcibly imbued him with his own blood essence, he had firmly stepped into the realm of first-tier gold immortal. Lord Xiansheng's understanding of the laws of heavenly Tao was obviously not enough, but he was a body cultivator. As long as the strength of his fleshly body was improved, it was possible for him to break through the realm by force. This extreme method of cultivation would bring him a lot of trouble when he broke through the realm of primordial in the future, but it was undoubtedly the best choice for him to improve his overall strength quickly. The halberd in Lord Xiansheng's hand was a supreme-grade gold immortal artifact that Wuqi had forged for him. It was so powerful that it could split the sky with a single strike. After looting Buddha Futu and the 7 primordial experts, as well as Liu Bang and the others, Wuqi had looted countless rare materials from Wuqi. Then he found dozens of innate energies in the huge spirit cave beneath Yuxiong Plain, which he injected into Lord Xiansheng's silver halberd. With that, he made it into a supreme-grade gold immortal artifact for the time being. Once Lord Xiansheng broke through the realm, he could nourish the halberd with his blood essence and divine soul, and when the time was right, it would become a primordial divine artifact. The halberd let out a deep dragon roar as it thrust toward Wuqi. Countless silver rainbows swept across Wuqi like a storm. Like true Lord Gu Yi, Lord Xiansheng walked the path of extreme speed. But unlike true Lord Gu Yi, as a member of the dragons, his fleshly body was much stronger than true Lord Gu Yi's. Once he stepped into the realm of primordial, his physical strength would be at least 1,000 times stronger than true Lord Gu Yi. This was the innate talent of the dragons, and no one could be blamed for it. Therefore Lord Xiansheng had true Lord Gu Yi's speed, but not his physical strength. Once he stepped into the realm of primordial, he would be even more terrifying than true Lord Gu Yi. Even now, if Wuqi did not use the rhino cloak, his speed would not be able to keep up with Lord Xiansheng, and every blow from Lord Xiansheng made Wuqi's fists ache. The numbness and swelling feeling spread from his wrists to his elbows. Sweating profusely, Lord Xiansheng laughed wildly as he attacked Wuqi with all his might. What a great thing it was to have Wuqi, a primordial expert, to fight with him every day. For primordial experts who stood high above the masses, it was impossible for those primordial experts in the world of 9 heavens to condescend to fight with their own disciples like this, not even their own personal disciples. Every move of a primordial expert contained the heavenly secret, so when Lord Xiansheng fought Wuqi head-on, each of Wuqi's punches gave him a refreshing feeling, and he did not need to worry that he would hurt Wuqi, for he could fight with all his might. Every blow he struck with all his strength, every blow used up all his understanding of the heavenly Tao, and every blow he struck out with all his strength, spirit, and energy. This was also one of the reasons why Lord Xianxing could make such rapid progress. With a primordial expert as his practice target, it would be embarrassing if he made slow progress. A series of deafening booms rang out as Lord Xianxing laughed wildly and unleashed another wave of 7,200 stabs. The dense beams of silver light turned into a sheet of silver light without the slightest gap, enveloping Wuxia in it. With a serious face, Wuxia met the attack with both fists. He successfully intercepted 7,125 of the attacks, but the remaining 75 attacks were beyond Wuqi's speed limit and hit Wuqi's body. Sparks flew in all directions. Ao Buzan, who was glaring at Wuqi with a black knife in his hand, laughed wildly and swung it toward his lower body. "Damn it, Lao Tzu will stab you to death with this spear." Standing 23 feet tall and staring at a black dragon head, Ao Buzan, who had yet to fully transform into his human form, swung his specially made machete that was 32 feet long, which looked like a large door, and brought it down excitedly. It was a divine weapon that Wuqi had crafted for him, and it was only a supreme-grade gold immortal artifact at the moment. When Ao Buzan, who was now a peak-level gold immortal, stepped into the primordial realm, as long as he worked hard to refine it with his own blood essence and divine soul, he would be able to upgrade it into a primordial divine weapon. However, out of Ao Buzan's bad taste, he strongly requested Wuqi to craft a black spear for him. In this way, whenever he faced a female enemy, he could shout, "Lao Tzu will stab you to death with this spear," which would give Ao Buzan a strong sense of pleasure. However, Wuqi did not satisfy Ao Buzan's bad taste. Gnashing his teeth, he crafted the black machete for Ao Buzan. Ao Buzan was a little resentful about this. Therefore, every time he fought with Wuqi, he would attack Wuqi without holding back, aiming at Wuqi's crotch, or occasionally taking care of Wuqi's face. That was because he wanted to slap Wuqi's face into a big pancake, to get back at Ao Buzan for not being able to stab people to his heart's content. Despite being a peak-level gold immortal, Ao Buzan still could not completely transform into his human form. Although Ao Buzan did not seem to care about this, Wuqi and others began to speculate about his origin. Everyone knew that the more ancient a divine beast's bloodline was, the harder it was to transform into a human form. However, even little K.Er, who was raised by Princess Zhonglu, had transformed into a pretty girl, and only Ao Buzan, who had the highest cultivation base, still had a dragon head on his head. What exactly was his origin? Glaring at Ao Buzan, Wuqi raised his leg and kicked the machete back. Then with his left hand, he thrust out a palm thunder, 1,000 feet long golden thunderbolt, accompanied by countless thunderbolts and flames of 5 elements, roared out and struck Ao Buzan, causing him to howl miserably and retreat in a sorry state. Even the most ordinary palm thunder had a terrible lethality in Wuqi's hand. Just a casual strike of it contained all 5 elements, and the energies of 5 elements reinforced and restrained each other, which gave it a great power. Ao Buzan had the cultivation base of a peak-level gold immortal, and the defense of his dragon scales was comparable to a supreme-grade gold immortal item. But still, Wuqi's attack shattered his scales and sent his flesh flying in all directions. Ao Buzan was in so much pain that tears rolled down his cheeks. Then he swung his machete and slashed at Wuqi's lower body, disregarding the blood and flesh splattering from Xiang Ao's body. 2 handsome boys, who looked only 13 or 14 years old, rushed over and cheered in unison. "Dragon meat! The meat of an ancient divine dragon. It tastes so good." They were the human incarnations of Gold Horn and Silver Horn, who had also stepped into the realm of first-tier gold immortals. But they had barely taken 3 steps when 2 young girls, who looked only 12 or 13 years old, grabbed their necks, pushed them to the ground and gave them a brutal beating. While beating the Gold Horn brothers, the 2 girls bellowed furiously, "You good for nothing! This meat is not fresh anymore. If you want to eat, you must find something fresh. If you want to eat, you must find something fresh." Ao Buzan, who was swinging his machete and slashing at Wuqi, was so frightened that his hands went limp. Howling, he rushed out of the light screen. Gold Horn and Silver Horn exchanged a glance, then sprung to their feet and joined hands with the two girls to pounce on Xiang Ao. Cut a leg for us, Ao Buzin. Gold Horn roared at the top of his lungs. In any case, you can regrow a leg with just 3 to 5 years of hard cultivation, so hurry up and cut a leg for us. Dragon pythons of fire and ice were an ancient species, the natural enemy of the ancient divine dragons. As a mischievous man, Ao Buzin was filled with bitterness when he saw the 4 Gold Horn brothers. He angrily roared and cursed. Then he rushed out of the light screen and disappeared without looking back. The Gold Horn brothers chased after him, determined to get a few pieces of meat from Ao Buzin, which were almost extinct now, so that they could feast on them to their heart's content. All of a sudden, a wild laughter was heard coming from the great hall next door. Ha ha ha, I finally concocted the 9 deaths and 9 lives white bone pill. It is a supreme-grade gold immortal pill that can prolong one's life by 36 periods. Patriarch Jiang Yun's laughter stopped abruptly. Yen Bugui, you bastard. Leave one for me and let me study it carefully. Why did you take all 108 spirit pills? What are you going to do with them? You bastard! You bastard! A loud rumble rang out as the wall next door suddenly collapsed. As Patriarch Jiang Yun was busy chasing after Yen Bugui, he did not have the time to put away his blazing pill cauldron. The violent alchemy flame destroyed the cauldron, causing a large part of the wall to collapse. Wuxia breathed a long sigh, then flipped over and kicked Lord Xianxing away, causing him to hang on the wall like a painting. I have to think of a way to prolong the lives of Yen Bugui and the other scouting officers who are practicing the cultivation techniques of the human race. Calculating with his fingers, Wuxia murmured under his breath. Where can I find a primordial immortal who has committed the most heinous crimes to kill? There's no hurry. I can still cultivate for a little longer. It's only been 1,000 years, and it's only been half a year outside. Inside Wuxia's dark-Yin celestial tower, the sound of explosions, collapses, screams, and wails could be heard incessantly. It was full of vitality and the joy of life. To continue cultivating in such an environment for 1,000 years, life was just too wonderful. Chapter 8:12. Time flowed like water. Another half a month had passed in the outside world, and the people in Dark-Yin Celestial Tower had been cultivating hard for 500 months, or more than 40 years. As usual, Wuxia devoured the natural energy in the outside world, converted it into chaotic energy, refined it into the energy essence of an immortal cultivator through his fleshly body, and delivered it to his subordinates through the enlightenment technique. During these days, Wuxia's cultivation base remained at the level of 9th tier primordial immortal, but his foundation was much more stable than before, and his energy essence and bloodline were more than 100 times stronger. He had spent most of his energy on the people around him, if not for the fact that he had sacrificed his own energy essence to help these people. Even though the time in this place had been sped up by 2,000 times, and there was an endless amount of natural energy to help them cultivate, how could Patriarch Jiang Yun and the others improve so quickly? After more than 40 years, Patriarch Jiang Yun and the others all had the cultivation base of peak-level gold immortals, and their Tao hearts had also bloomed as Wuxia preached to them day and night. This germination was the opportunity to enter the primordial great Tao, the gateway for them to step into the Tao realm from an ant. As long as they carefully nurtured this germination with their blood and sweat, they would one day step into the Tao realm. Ao Buzin, Gold Horn, Silver Horn, Gold Feather, Silver Feather, Lord Xianxing, his father Ao Guang, the Dragon King of the East Sea Ao Qua, the Dragon King of Qianzhong Lake, Ao Quan, the former leader of the aquatic clans on Myriad Immortals planet, Little K, the phoenix raised by Princess Zhonglu, and Feng Tianling, the descendant of the fire phoenix whom Little K, had seduced. These people were the most capable and closest demon cultivators under Wuxia's command, and all of them had the hope of stepping into the realm of primordial. What surprised Wuxia the most was that the rabbit demon rabbit and monkey demon Yuanqing of the underhand sect that he'd casually taken in all those years ago had actually awakened their ancient bloodlines, and their cultivations improved the fastest amongst the numerous demon cultivators of the underhand sect. Wuxia gave them special attention for a period of time, preaching various cultivation manuals of primeval demons every day, causing them to catch up to the footsteps of Audiobook and the others. Among the many demon cultivators around Wuxia, the one who gave him the biggest headache now was Catfish. Her cultivation base and realm were equal to that of Audiobook and others, and for some reason, her divine strength was able to suppress Lord Xianxing to the point of suffocation. Among the demon cultivators around Wuxia, only Audiobook and Yuanqing, the descendant of the mighty ape, could barely suppress her in terms of physical strength. But when Catfish Flood Dragon was the king of the mountain in the depths of Meng Mountains, she killed countless living beings every day and spent all her time devouring them. As a result, she was entangled with evil karma and was surrounded by boundless evils. Her true form was just a deep water black catfish, and she did not have any ancient bloodline. It was extremely difficult for her to transform into a human form, and coupled with the entanglement of evil karma, she still looked like a catfish until now. Through the Dharma eye of transmigration of the Buddhist League, which Wuxia had cultivated with the great light indestructible Amitabha treasure scripture, he could see that Catfish Flood Dragon was shrouded in a blood-red light and shrouded in black mist. Obviously, she had eaten too many things that she should not have eaten over the years. It was like a heavy shell wrapped around her, preventing the germination of a primordial immortal from sprouting. Not only did it delay her transformation into a human form, it also made it very difficult for her to break through to the primordial immortal realm in the future. For now, she could only do as Wuxia had planned, find a few primordial immortals who had committed the most heinous crimes and secretly kill them, then let Catfish Flood Dragon plunder a great deal of virtue of heaven and earth from them. With the virtue, she could wash away the evil karma around her, freeing her from these troubles. Apart from these demon cultivators, the senior immortals around Wuxia were Patriarch Jiangyin, Patriarch Qingwu, Patriarch Baixia, Patriarch Qing Xian, Patriarch Qingshen, and Patriarch Qingyi. They were the 6 old immortals from White Cloud Immortal Sect and Tranquil Vimla Sect. With the help of Wuxia, their cultivation bases had reached the same level as Audiobook and the others. In addition to that, Lu Qingfeng and Lu Ziyuan, the 2 brothers, had been working hard in their cultivation base over the years. Together with Wuqia's special help, they had also reached the point where they were just one step away from the realm of primordial immortal. There was also Supremacy 3 Flame, who was Wuqia's friend in times of adversity. Over the years, he had been handling the affairs of Underhand Sect for Wuxia. He stayed in Mount Picking Star, and basically never left the sect. All he did was carefully train and manage Wuqia's disciples. Wuxia was very grateful to him, so he spent a lot of time and effort on Supremacy 3 Flame and Shuemei. Now Supremacy 3 Flame had successfully attained the enlightenment of the realm of primordial immortal, and his technique of controlling fire with the divine flame of great tranquility was only inferior to the sovereign of Myriad Immortal Alliance. The little girl, Shuemei, was so smart that she had reached this critical level. With just a little push, she would be able to step into the realm of primordial immortal. As for the disciples of Luo clan whom Wuxia took in on a whim, Luo Lu, Luo Hao, Luo Shui, Luo Ling, and Luo Yu were the most talented among them, especially the 3 sisters. If it were not for their outstanding talents, Wuxia would not have taken them as his disciples. After over 1,000 years of enlightenment and constant explanation of the essence of the Great Tao, they had all successfully stepped into the realm of primordial. However, it was too difficult for a gold immortal to break through the realm of primordial immortal. In addition to the huge demand for natural energy, it also required some kind of enlightenment and inspiration. For now, Wuxia also needed to find a few primordial immortals who had committed heinous crimes and kill them, then use the virtue of heaven and earth to forcibly push these friends, family, and disciples into the realm of primordial. Only a freak like Wuxia could do this. How could other primordial immortals treat their disciples, family, and friends in this way? For ordinary primordial immortals, a drop of blood essence and energy essence was more important than their lives. It was impossible for them to enlighten their disciples and forcibly improve their cultivation bases. It was a good thing that some primordial immortals who came from the evil path did not plunder the blood essence and energy essence of their disciples, but it was absolutely impossible for them to donate their own blood essence and energy essence to outsiders. Every drop of a primordial immortal's blood essence and energy essence was extremely precious and related to their very foundation. Who else could do this except for a freak like Wuxia, who could devour foreign objects without limit and transform them into blood essence and energy essence? Immortals were selfish, and only Wuxia could be so generous. As for the essence of the great Tao, the essence of the great Tao that every primordial immortal comprehended was comprehended by them at the critical moment of life and death, after spending countless hours of hard work. If one wanted to hear a word or half of the true heavenly Tao from their mouths, it would depend on what one had to exchange for it. It was better for personal disciples. Generally speaking, those primordial immortals would give lectures for 3 days or 6 hours every period, depending on the generosity of the primordial immortals. As for how much a personal disciple could benefit from the lectures, it would depend on his own ability of comprehension. No primordial immortal would use his blood-draining celestial fiend clone to teach his friends, family, and disciples all kinds of heavenly Tao day and night like Wuxia, forcing them to comprehend the endless mysteries in it. As for those in-name disciples and outer disciples, if one wanted to get a word or half of a primordial immortal's advice, it would depend on how many natural treasures they offered as tribute. If they offered a lot, 1 or 2 words of advice would be enough for them to comprehend for a few periods. If they offered too little, they might even be scolded. Are you purposely trying to embarrass me with such a small amount of gifts? It was because Wuxia was willing to spend so much and cultivate the people around him at all costs that the grand occasion of today could come about. With a total of 29 people who had the potential to break through the realm of primordial, and thousands of subordinates whose cultivation bases had reached the realm of gold immortals, Wuxia was now in a state of happiness and distress. I have to find a few primordial immortals who have committed the most heinous crimes and kill them. Otherwise, it will be difficult for all of you to break through the realm of primordial in a short time. Sitting cross-legged on a hassock, Wuxia gritted his teeth as he looked at the 29 friends and relatives who had the potential to break through the realm of primordial. Everyone was staring at Wuxia with their bright eyes, filled with passion, affection, and friendship. Their pure and warm feelings were like strong wine, lingering in the air between them. Even Audiobook, who was usually the most shameless fellow, now looked at Wuxia with a hint of admiration and respect in his eyes. Everyone knew that if it were not for Wuxia, they might not have had the opportunity today even after thousands of reincarnations, let alone Audiobook, who had been made into a storage ring and would never be able to make a name for himself. It was Wuxia who had given them such an opportunity, and they finally had the chance to stand at the top of all living beings. Sitting next to Wuxia was Princess Zhonglu, who was clad in a black palace dress and had long hair like Wuxia. With her head down, she was fiddling with 3 phoenix feathers that she had pulled out from little K, Earth's tail, and was inscribing primordial divine runes into the feathers. She was going to use little K, Earth's tail, Aobuzan's dragon whiskers, the scales of gold horn and silver horn, and Rabbit Xiaobai's long hair to make a fun magical treasure. Princess Zhonglu had successfully broken through the realm of primordial immortals without any stagnation. She carried the bloodline of the primordial heaven god, and was the manifestation of the great Tao of heaven and earth. A breakthrough was a breakthrough, and there was not even a heavenly tribulation. She had dismantled the original 5 Thunders immortal zither, and was going to use it on this new magical treasure. It was a little embarrassing for a primordial immortal to use a zither that was only a heaven immortal item. Upon hearing Wuqi's plan, Princess Zhonglu lowered her head and sighed. We have to find a suitable target. The 7 primordial immortals you killed last time have been guarding the mortal world all year round, and they have accumulated a lot of virtues. They have avoided the punishment of the heavenly Tao with virtues, so it's no good to kill them. Where can we find someone like the sovereign who has committed a heinous crime to kill us? The group of people looked at each other with a distressed expression. Wuxia had a strong army around him now, but he was still one step away from being reborn. If all these people could break through the realm of primordial, Wuqi's power would undergo a tremendous change, and many things could be carried out slowly. Just one step away. Wuqi gritted his teeth and murmured in a low voice. Just one step away. Heh, as long as all of you become primordial immortals. When the 6 states unite, gather all those freaks together, and spend some time to raise them all to the level of gold immortals, the world will be lively. With a sigh, Wuqi shook his head a little vexed. Where could he find a primordial immortal who had committed a heinous crime? Just as the crowd was racking their brains for a solution, they moved at the same time and looked up with ferocious faces. About 100 million miles above them, outside the 2 palaces that Emperor Haozuan had given to Wuqi, King Baishan was approaching cautiously under the cover of night with a large group of ferocious-looking generals and thousands of black-robed oracles. Judging from King Baishan's ferocious and violent expression, he should not be here to drink and chat with Wuqi. Chapter 8:13. Hee. Wuqi's sinister laughter rang out in the dimly lit hall. His eyes shone with a strange gleam. Under the gaze of his chaotic divine eyes, the thick fire of karma around the dozen or so cloaked men around King Baishan was so eye-catching that they looked like a dozen torches, and the crimson glow of the fire of karma was so tempting. The fire of karma was the condensation of too much karma, a flame ignited by all kinds of filthy thoughts in people's hearts. Buddhism called it the red lotus karma fire, and it was the filthiest and most powerful invisible flame in the world. Serious immortal and Buddhist cultivators would avoid this kind of fire of karma, as even the slightest touch of it would cause their golden bodies to fall into the cycle of samsara. The fire of karma around the men around King Baishan soared hundreds of feet high. Clearly, they were not immortal or Buddhist cultivators. Even fiend immortals and ghost immortals dared not touch this terrible flame, so they should be pure human beings. How many sins did they have to commit to accumulate so much karma and ignite such a blazing fire of karma? Wuqi marveled. If he killed them, how many virtues of heaven and earth could he get? He had no idea how many sins they had committed, how many people they had killed, and how many laws of the heavenly Tao they had violated. But this was really a virtue that came knocking on his door, and it would be disrespectful to refuse it. Laughing loudly, Wuqi opened his mouth and sprayed out a beam of green light, from which 360 miniature kunwu swords flew out. These swords were only 1/3 the size of the original kunwu swords, and they were the largest number that Wuqi could produce now. The fact that he could produce 360 swords that were slightly smaller, but fully functional would not affect Wuqi's overall strength. If he used them to lay out the fiend-slaying sword formation, its power would be about twice that of a formation laid out by 108 kunwu swords. After handing the kunwu swords to 12 prudent men, including Patriarch Jiang Yun, Wuqi ordered, "Apart from you, choose 348 prudent men who are proficient in formations and prepare to lay out the fiend-slaying sword formation. Since King Baishan is here, don't let him go. The people around him might be where your fortuitous encounters lie." The eyes of Patriarch Jiang Yun and the others brightened. They quickly took over the kunwu swords handed over by Wuqi and left the hall. Then Wuqi gave Ao Buzan and the other demon cultivators a look and said with a cold grin, "Come with me. Let's see what King Baishan wants to do first." Frowning, Wuqi murmured in surprise, "Didn't they say he was imprisoned by Emperor Haozuan in Diyu's imperial prison, and will never come out? His title is going to be inherited by Diyu's royal family. Why did he come here to make trouble?" Princess Zhang carefully put the 3 phoenix feathers in her hand into her sleeve. She yawned lazily and said lazily, "Who cares how he came out? Let's kill him first, then kill all the direct descendants of King Baishan's bloodline, and then find out who released him from the clan prison without permission." A 5-colored divine ray burst out of the top of Princess Zhongli's head, in which 3 shrines, each about 10 feet tall and inlaid with gold and jade, hovered. Over the past 1,000 years, with the help of Wuqi, Princess Zhonglu had formed the first golden body of the god of Scourge, and with the help of Wuqi, she had also formed the golden body of the god of Plague and the golden body of the god of Thunder. Once the golden body of the god of Plague was activated, plagues would be everywhere within millions of miles, And all the living beings whose cultivation bases were lower than Princess Zhongli would not be able to escape. If the golden body of the god of plague was used to cast a divine spell on one person, the terrible plague curse would be a headache even for those whose cultivation bases were several levels higher than Princess Zhongli. As for the golden body of the god of thunder, there was nothing special about it. But once it was activated, the area within millions of miles would be turned into an absolute realm of thunder and lightning, with nothing but thunder and lightning. If she focused all her divine power to unleash the ancient void-shattering thunder, it would be a supreme divine ability that could shatter the primordial void. Even the Pango heaven creating thunder, which the great Saint Pango used to create this world, was derived from the ancient void-shattering thunder, which showed how powerful this divine ability of Princess Zhongli was. In terms of physical strength, Princess Zhongli was far inferior to Wuqi, and in terms of unpredictable and powerful divine abilities, Wuqi was no match for Princess Zhongli. The two of them left Dark Yin Celestial Tower hand in hand, followed by Ao Buzin, Lord Xiansheng, and other demon cultivators who were impatient to study the sword formation. Huang Liang also came with a group of generals of the East Sea, who had been completely brainwashed and loyal to Wuqi in the past 1,000 years. The cultivation techniques of the human race were the fastest to master. Over the past 1,000 years, the East Sea had accumulated tens of thousands of generals with the cultivation bases of the second Pango heaven. And now, hundreds of generals with the cultivation bases of the 8 and 9 stars of the second Pango heaven had followed them. All of them were armed to the teeth, using the supreme-grade armors and weapons that Wuqi had personally crafted for them over the years, which were top-notch in both offense and defense. Wuqi had not slept or rested for more than 1,000 years. He had not only helped them in their cultivation, but also infused them with a lot of blood essence and energy essence, crafted all kinds of weapons and armors for them, and helped Patriarch Jiang Yun concoct pills and draw talismans. If he did not have 18 blood-draining celestial fiends, Wuqi would have died of exhaustion long ago. He had to take care of more than 1 million people. Even if he was only responsible for a small portion of the most elite people, the workload was still too much. But now, as he looked at his subordinates in bright armors and towering murderous auras behind him, Wuqi was filled with a heroic spirit. He threw his head back and roared with laughter, then put his arm around Princess Zhongli's waist and strode out with them. With the help of Princess Zhongli's magical art, it took them only the span of 2 or 3 breaths of time to reach the surface of the natural energy ocean. On the roof of the tallest main hall, Wuqi and his company hid their figures and watched quietly as King Baishan and his men carefully sneaked in from a distance. Under the night sky, King Baishan's army of more than 20,000 generals was divided into more than 2,000 squads, cautiously approaching the core of Wuqi's palaces from all directions. Their movements were as smooth as flowing water, and in just a few leaps, they had closed the distance of dozens of miles. The 2 palaces given to Wuqi by Emperor Haozuan covered an area of hundreds of miles, and they were given to him together with ordinary guards, maids, and a large number of eunuchs. Wuqi was a master who was easy to serve, and he usually spent most of his time in seclusion. As a result, the servants never saw Wuqi and Princess Zhongli. Now that it was late at night, the maids and eunuchs had gone to bed, and only the guards on night duty were still wandering around carelessly. After all, Wuqi's foundation was still shallow, and he did not have many relatives or children, and there were no important things stored in those palaces. So these guards were not under any pressure, and even if they were patrolling at night, it was just for show. Not to mention that there were no thieves in Liangzhu. Even if there were, they would not be able to steal anything of value, and they would not be able to hurt anyone important. But King Baishan's generals did not think so. They invaded Wuqi's palaces like quicksilver, killing all the living things in their path. Whether it was the guards on duty, the maids and eunuchs who had gone to bed, or the tame birds and beasts used for night patrols, these formidable generals killed them all. Not even a chicken or a dog was spared. Wuqi pursed his lips. Do I have such a big grudge against him? As Wuqi and his company possessed a profound cultivation base, they could see every single movement of those people in the dark night. Seeing a general with the cultivation base of the 7 stars realm of the second Pengu heaven crush a cricket that jumped out of the grass with 1 foot, Wuqi could not help but complain bitterly. Not only did you not spare a chicken or a dog, but you even want to kill all the insects? How much do you hate yourself? The group of people were left speechless. They watched as a few intruders flew up the trees and strangled all the birds in the nests, regardless of their size. Even the eggs were crushed into a paste. Tu Xiaobai, who had the best temper among them, was so angry that she waved her little fists. The young girl that Tu Xiaobai had transformed into was just like her name, petite and adorable to the extreme. She was only as tall as an ordinary person's waist. Due to her rabbit nature, Tu Xiaobai was usually gentle and kind, and was the least willing to fight with others. But when she saw that these people did not even spare the birds' eggs, she could not help but say angrily, "Master, these people deserve to die 1,000 times for their crimes." Princess Zhonglu raised her chin and said coldly, "They really deserve to die. Humph, let's teach them a lesson first." Gently waving her hands in the air, Princess Zhonglu unleashed her divine power soundlessly. She had already locked onto the 20,000 invaders with her divine soul. She did not attack these generals. Instead, she followed a mysterious guiding force and directly found these people's blood relatives in this life. There were more than 20,000 high-ranking military officers, and each of them had a huge family backing them. Some of them had thousands of people in their families. Grinning coldly, Princess Zhonglu drew these people's energy into a gray net that ordinary people could not see. The golden body of the god of plagues hovering over her head gently blew out a puff of gray air, and all the relatives of these 20,000 generals were infected with all kinds of strange plagues and poisons at the same time. Watching Princess Zhonglu do this, Wuqi could not help but be amazed by her attainment in divine magic. This kind of meticulous means of controlling the life and death of others was something that even Wuqi had not mastered yet. This kind of terrible power that could silently and invisibly destroy an entire family made Wuqi a little more wary of those gods he might encounter in the future. King Baishan was accompanied by thousands of black-robed oracles, who were also divided into nearly 1,000 squads and followed silently behind the invaders. They kept throwing numerous bone talismans, spirit bones, banners, and formation discs in all directions, quickly laying out the 10 ultimate formation, which was specially used by the Directorate of Celestials to trap and kill powerful enemies, with Wuqi's 2 palaces as the core. The 10 ultimate formation could sever heaven, earth, gods, immortals, Buddhas, fiends, ghosts, demons, spirits, and humans. It could fuse all the ruthless energies between heaven and earth and wipe out all life. As these oracles moved, a faint black mist rose from the ground. Wherever it passed, all the flowers, plants, and trees withered and decayed, and all the houses in the palaces collapsed and decayed. The place shrouded by the black mist turned into a lifeless, withered land. "What kind of hatred do you have? Didn't I just kill 2 of your sons?" Wuqi frowned and sighed. "Get into formation." The 300 gold immortals selected by Patriarch Jiang Yun had already come behind King Baishan, and the others with Kunwu swords in hand. They formed a circle with a diameter of 1,000 miles, and as Wuqi gave a soft cry, they unleashed their swords at the same time. Invisible sword beams shot into the void and slowly drew in the power of heaven and earth in the surroundings to form the fiend-slaying sword formation. A huge iron plate was quietly appearing in front of King Baishan, who was charging forward angrily. Chapter 8:14. Standing on the top of the palace, Wuqi watched quietly as King Baishan's men slaughtered wantonly in his territory. Kill, kill, kill. These servants and guards are all the people who used to live in this palace, and if you kill them all, Wuqi will bring more of his own men from the East Sea and plant them here. Even the original palaces were built in the style of Diyu, and Wuqi thought they were a little too ugly. The dark mist stirred up by the 10 ultimate formation had destroyed all these palaces, and Wuqi could rebuild a batch of palaces and pavilions according to his own will. As for the flowers and trees, it was not a big deal. With the infinite natural energy in Yuxiong Plain, he could easily restore them to their original appearance. Moreover, the replanted trees could also form a formation with the rebuilt palaces, and they would not be infiltrated as easily as they were today. After all, this was only a property Emperor Haozuan gave to his people, and the various facilities here were not enough to satisfy Wu Qi's discerning eyes. It was better to destroy them all, as he could rearrange everything. The newly built palaces and gardens would not be as free as they were today. Even if a 9th-tier primordial immortal dared to sneak in, he would have to pay with his life. With his hands clasped behind his back, Wu Qi sighed softly and suddenly let out a long roar as he watched the 20,000 soldiers brought by King Baishan approach. As Wu Qi's roar echoed out, Ao Buzan, who was standing behind Wu Qi, let out a strange cry. Standing 20 feet tall, Ao Buzan swung his black machete and roared. "Who are you, thieves? How dare you come to my place in the middle of the night with evil intentions? Eat my spear." Ao Buzan leaped into the air and swung his machete at an invading general 2 or 3 miles away, who was clad in black armor and breaking the neck of the last night guard. "Eat my spear." The general instinctively grabbed a round shield from his back and placed it in front of him. The most lethal part of a spear was nothing more than stabbing and stabbing. With the round shield protecting the vital parts of his upper body, the general was confident that he could block Ao Buzan's fatal spear. With a cracking sound, Ao Buzan hacked the general, who had just stepped into the realm of second Pango heaven, into 2 halves. It came down from the top of his head, and came out from the bottom of his crotch. Chi-Chi's entire body, along with his armor and shield, was cut into 2 pieces. His internal organs and blood splattered all over the ground. Ao Buzan trod on a watery cloud, and soared into the sky complacently. He let out a strange laugh and said, "Idiot, Lao Tzu said 1 spear, so you should just block 1 spear?" Behind Wu Qi, Yuan Qing, who had the bloodline of a mighty ape, transformed into a yellow-skinned young man about 10 feet tall. Though skinny, his bones were strong, and his eyes were bright. Seeing that Ao Buzan had succeeded, Yuan Qing let out a shrill cry and leaped into the air, waving a large golden stick that Wu Qi had specially crafted for him, and spitting flames from time to time. "Eat my spear, you little rascal! I'll poke your gallbladder." Yuan Qing had been led astray by Ao Buzan. He had been completely led astray by Ao Buzan. The cudgel, as thick as a big bowl, whipped up a gust of wind and pierced toward the gallbladder of the leading black-armored warrior. Just as the warrior was about to block it with his saber, Yuan Qing suddenly changed his move. The heavy cudgel slammed heavily on the warrior's ribs with a swoosh, like a python turning over its body. Yuan Qing's stick was not heavy, but it was made by Wu Qi from a piece of heavy fire elemental metal that had been refined and tempered for countless years on a neutron star in outer heavenly realms. It was a neutron star material, so weight and the like were meaningless. Wu Qi had set up many formations on the stick to reduce its weight. Usually, when Yuan Qing swung the stick, it weighed only about 5,000 kilograms. But when it hit a human, the formations on the stick dissipated immediately, and all the weight of the stick blasted out. With a crisp sound, the man's armor and half of his body disintegrated into the tiniest energy particles, which then turned into countless shining specks of light that shot out in all directions. Yuan Qing laughed strangely and swung his staff like a tornado, beating the other 8 or 9 heavily armored warriors into a sorry state. Their swords, spears, halberds, and all sorts of other weapons were smashed into smithereens by Yuan Qing's heavy staff. In the blink of an eye, 8 or 9 burly men had been beaten until their bodies burst open and they died. Whether it was in terms of cultivation base, strength, speed, or technique, these men were far inferior to Yuan Qing. When Ao Buzan saw that Yuan Qing had killed so many people with ease, he snorted angrily and swung his blade at the dozen black-armored men who were leaping at him. As a peak-level gold immortal and a member of the primordial dragons, Ao Buzan's pure physical strength had reached the limit below the realm of primordial immortals. As he swung the blade, the void in front of it cracked open. The dozen black-armored men howled miserably as their weapons and armors were cut in half by Ao Buzan. When Yuan Qing saw that Ao Buzan had killed a few more men than him, he roared and swung his stick at the 20-odd black-armored men who were charging at him. A series of egg-cracking noises rang out as Yuan Qing smashed the 20-odd black-armored men like eggs, sending their bodies flying thousands of feet away in all directions. Frowning, Lord Xianxing stood next to Wu Qi, shaking his head and saying, "Useless chickens and stray dogs." "Tisk, it's really." He gave Wuqi a sideways glance and said with a teasing smile, "In terms of cultivation base, a peak-level gold immortal bullies a poor worm in the 1-star realm of the second Panga heaven. In terms of equipment, a future primordial immortal artifact bullies an ordinary artifact. In terms of bloodline, the bloodline of an ancient divine beast bullies a mortal." Wuqi stretched out a finger and wagged it casually, then said shamelessly, "You can't say it like that. I've admitted the first 2 points. I did bully them. But the last point is that human beings are formed from the bloodline of hundreds of divine beasts and birds in the world. And they also have half of the bloodline of the great Saint Pangu. Although their strength is not as good as Ao Buzin and Yuan Qing. But, well, human beings are more balanced, aren't they?" Lord Xianxing blinked his eyes and opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but he could not utter a single word. Wuqi was right. Human beings were indeed a race with balanced development, and they had their own advantages over any ancient bloodline. But how did one look at this advantage? In a battlefield, it depended on the strength of brute force. In this regard, human beings were indeed not as good as the bloodline of the dragons and the primordial divine apes. Amidst the sound of bones and flesh being broken, Ao Buzin and Yuan Qing killed hundreds of black-armored men in a frenzy. Of the more than 20,000 generals brought by King Baishan, there were only a dozen of them who had reached the peak of the 9 stars realm of the second Pangu heaven, and could fight against Ao Buzin and Yuan Qing. Now they were guarding King Baishan, and had no intention of attacking. King Baishan stood on a hillside a few miles away, looking at them coldly. Wuqi had asked Princess Zhonglu to dispel the mist that had concealed them. Looking at each other from a distance of several miles, Wuqi suddenly laughed. He cupped his fist and said, "Your Highness, how have you been after 1,000 years?" Upon hearing Wuqi's words, King Baishan could not help but laugh. 1,000 years? Do you think I'm a fool? 1,000 years? King Baishan suddenly sucked in a cold breath. He stared blankly at Wuqi for a while, and then remembered that Wuqi had obtained a supreme tower that could control the flow of time from the secret vault of the Directorate of Celestials. With Wuqi's cultivation base having broken through the realm of Supreme Oracle, it was possible for him to accelerate time by thousands of times. He had been imprisoned in the imperial prison by Emperor Haozuan for more than half a year, and Wuqi had spent 1,000 years here. Looking at the generals of the East Sea standing behind Wuqi, King Baishan took a few steps back reflexively. Each and every one of them had the cultivation base of the late, or even the peak of the second Pangu heaven. Wuqi looked at King Baishan and sneered. He waved his hand and gave a low cry. Lord Xianxing pulled out his silver dragon halberd and rushed out, while Catfish Flood Dragon waved the mountain-sized hammer Wuqi had forged for her, while the rest of the demon cultivators ran out with their weapons in their hands. Especially Gold Horn, Silver Horn, Gold Feather, and Silver Feather. Their lower bodies remained human, but their upper bodies had returned to the form of dragon pythons. They opened their mouths and inhaled the enemies around them. Large groups of black-armored men howled miserably as they were sucked into their mouths and swallowed in the blink of an eye. Huang Liang gave a soft cry. Hundreds of generals of the East Sea under his lead drew their weapons and followed Huang Liang's lead, forming the East Sea wave-folding formation specially designed for them by Wuqi. Like an endless tide, they rushed out, bringing with them the terrible aura of a charging army. They charged into the army of King Baishan's subordinates like a tiger charging into a flock of sheep. Wherever they passed, blood and flesh flew in all directions, and broken limbs were thrown all over the ground. King Baishan watched coldly as a large number of his subordinates were killed, as if they were not the generals of the second Pangu heaven, but pawns that could be discarded at will. There was a faint smile on the corner of his mouth, as if he could not wait for all his subordinates to be killed. Wuqi could not help but be a little surprised. Even if King Baishan was one of the most authoritative princes in Diyu, how many troops could he have? How many generals of the second Pangu heaven could he have to trample on? Especially in his current situation, when he had just escaped from the imperial prison. How many loyal generals were still willing to die for him? How could he just let the last batch of generals who might be loyal to him die like this? Just as Wuqi was wondering, King Baishan raised his hand and waved. The dozen men around him, whose bodies were shrouded in hellfire like torches, chuckled in a deep voice. Their faces were hidden under their cloaks, and no one could see their faces clearly. They chanted a spell in a low voice, and a great plume of black smoke surged out of the 10-terminal formation, turning into countless pitch-black pythons and rushing towards the men in the battle. Wuqi was furious. This was a spell for the sacrifice of flesh and blood. King Baishan did not expect these generals to pose much of a threat to him. His plan was to use them as sacrifices, so he did not care how many of them Wuqi and others killed. Princess Zhonglu reacted quickly. She unleashed a great sheet of 5-colored divine light, which enveloped Ao Buzin and others at the same time. Wherever the flame went, the black fog and pythons dared not come close. Wuqi shouted a few times, and Ao Buzin and others hurriedly retreated to Wuqi's side. The black smoke enveloped more than 20,000 generals brought by King Baishan, who seemed to have lost their minds and just let the smoke engulf them. The sound of bones and flesh being chewed rang out incessantly, accompanied by a heart-trembling sound. A beam of black light descended from the sky, and in the next moment, a fiend god about a mile tall and made entirely of white bones appeared silently in front of Wuqi. This was not the projection of Lei Meng, the fiend god worshipped by Wuqi. Instead, under the infinite temptation of more than 20,000 gold immortal sacrifices, this fiend god had chosen to descend in his true form. The black cloaks of the dozen or so black-robed men around King Baishan burned at the same time, gradually revealing their figures. 2 low-grade supreme oracles and 13 peak-level sun oracles. Chapter 8:15. There were 2 low-level supreme oracles. Wuqi saw a pattern of a black supreme tower embroidered on their sleeves, which indicated that they had just stepped into this realm. But they were, after all, supreme oracles, who had the overall strength to fight against primordial immortals. They were existences that he had to deal with carefully. As for the 13 peak-level sun oracles, Wuqi shook his head indifferently. A peak-level sun realm cultivator was merely a peak-level gold immortal, and Wuqi could easily find any cultivator of this level around him now. He could easily crush them. But the problem was the fiend god hovering in front of him. Hundreds of tattered black strips of cloth were wrapped around his body. As the night breeze blew past him, the strips of cloth wriggled like venomous snakes, letting out shrill ghost howls from time to time. His upper body was 70 to 80% similar to a human skeleton, except that he had a few more vertebrae and ribs, and 3 sharp black horns on his skull. However, the lower half of his body, which was below his pelvis, was a mass of thick black gas. Countless twisted human faces could be seen in the black gas. Sharp and shrill howls pierced through the clouds, making people's eardrums hurt. It was as if their souls were about to be sucked out of their bodies. The fiend god's cultivation base was extremely frightening, and the attribute of his power was extremely bizarre. Even with the all-encompassing records in the Scroll of Stealing, Wuqi could not tell what type of death energy this fiend god possessed. His cultivation base was clearly stronger than Wuqi's, and Wuqi could vaguely see the upper limit of his power, just like a man hovering in the sky could vaguely see the edge of the ocean. But Wuqi reckoned that he was not his match for the time being. Only by trapping him with the fiend's slaying sword formation, and gradually whittling away at his essence could he kill him. If Wuqi were to fight him with only his own cultivation base, it would be difficult for him to resist him. The 2 supreme oracles were easy to deal with, and Wuqi and Princess Zhonglu would definitely give them a hard time if they joined forces. However, the skeleton would not show any mercy to Wuqi and his wife. This was the biggest problem. After pondering for a moment, Wuqi raised his right hand and waved it. The natural phenomena medallion flew up along with tens of thousands of beams of light. Large clouds of smoke spurted out and condensed into a small world above Wuqi, trapping the fiend god in it. Muffled explosions could be heard from time to time in the void as the fiend celestial struggled and roared in the small world. The natural phenomena medallion could only trap him temporarily, and could not destroy him directly. Lei Meng, Wuqi whispered to Princess Zhonglu. Princess Zhonglu nodded. She performed an incantation gesture with both hands, and recited a few incantations in a low voice. A bolt of lightning came whistling down from the void, and Lei Meng's 100-mile-tall projection clone immediately appeared in front of Wuqi. Lei Meng patted his belly, looked curiously at Wuqi, and said with a smile, "Do you have any good offerings this time?" "Well, I'm very satisfied with what you have offered the last 2 times." Lei Meng glanced at Wuqi with the lightning in his eyes, then cried out in shock, Little one, how did your strength grow so fast? You really surprised me. Of the 14,597 people who have worshipped me, your cultivation base has grown the fastest." Smiling, Wuqi pointed in King Baishan's direction and said, "Lei Meng, help me hold off King Baishan and those around him. When I'm done with the skeleton he summoned, I'll join hands with you to kill them. The bodies and souls of those 2 supreme oracles are yours, and I only want the virtues that will fall after I kill them." Lei Meng's eyes shone brightly as he fixed his eyes on King Baishan and those around him, whose faces were a little unsightly. After hesitating for a while he muttered, "It's not fat enough. As you know, the souls of supreme oracles are stronger than those of mortals, but there's a limit to their strength. I've eaten a supreme oracle once, and his bone marrow was all dried up, and I couldn't even squeeze out a drop of blood from his body. So it's not good for me." Wuqi held up 2 fingers and promised, "Help me hold them off, and I'll find 2 primordial immortals as my offerings. Of course, you'll have to help me as well." Lei Meng stared at Wuqi in astonishment. There were so many oracles and powerful clans in Diyu, and there were some who dared to offer primordial immortals as offerings. But they were all saint emperors who had swept through the world in ancient times. How many years had it been since Lei Meng heard such a bold statement? Offering primordial immortals as offerings? Saliva mixed with electric plasma dripped from the corner of Lei Meng's mouth as he nodded and said, "Just hold them off, right? Leave it to me." With a strange laugh, Lei Meng glanced at the small world Wuqi had trapped with the natural phenomena medallion, wanting to see who Wuqi was going to deal with. But he shuddered and looked at King Baishan in horror. "Do you have to fight so desperately? I can't believe you've summoned Guiyu's true form. Hee interesting it looks like this time." Lei Meng muttered in a low voice, and then a dull thunderclap rang out in the sky. He stared at Wuqi and said, "I'll give you some benefits this time. Just kill Guiyu, and leave everything outside to me. I'll give you 10 days. If you can kill Guiyu, you'll have to give me his ghost head. Ha ha." As Lei Meng laughed, a plume of sticky, pale purple electric plasma that looked like molten lava slowly poured down from an invisible hole in the sky and injected into his body. As more and more electric plasma was injected into his body became shorter and shorter, and eventually, he was about the same height as an ordinary man. But he was surrounded by endless thunderclouds, and his whole body was immersed in a sea of electric plasma that was as warm as jade. A terrible pressure of thunder came from him, forcing Wuqi and Princess Zhonglu to take a step back. Lei Meng's true form had come to Panga continent from the world he came from. Wuqi and Princess Zhonglu clearly sensed the rejection of the laws of the heavenly Tao to him. A powerful force of repulsion was applied to Lei Meng, causing his true form to flicker from time to time like a reflection in the water, as if he would be forcibly expelled from the world at any time. Wuqi looked up at the sky. The dark mist of the 10 ultimate formation pervaded the void, and the fiend-slaying sword formation isolated the world from the outside world. This place had become a world of its own. Fortunately, Lei Meng did not suffer the full counterattack of the laws of the heavenly Tao. Otherwise, if he dared to come to Pengu world with his true form at any other time, he would have been killed by the power of the heavenly Tao, or smashed to pieces by Diyu's tremendous force. Even so, he was still being rejected by the endless power of the heavenly Tao. 10 days was the time Lei Meng gave Wuqi, and it was also the longest time he could stay in this world. Even with Dark Yin's celestial tower, Wuqi could not resolve the rejection. No matter how Wuqi sped up or decelerated, the flow of time was also a kind of power of the heavenly Tao, and Lei Meng still could not avoid the expulsion. 10 days is enough. Wuqi glanced at King Baishan, whose face was unsightly, and suddenly laughed. "I've only killed 2 of your sons. Do you have to hate me so much? If you didn't go after Lu Bang, why did you come after me?" If you didn't have an affair with Liu Bang, why did you kill your sons? King Baishan's face darkened, and he did not say a word. He just stared at Wuqi and slowly pulled out his sword. An aura as hot as fire slowly poured out of King Baishan's body. Shockingly, he was also an expert of the third Panga heaven. A mass of bright yellow energy shot out from the top of his head, in which a yellow dragon, several miles long, floated in the yellow cloud, its huge body bringing great pressure to those who looked at it. Lei Meng's face turned extremely serious. He showed 3 fingers to Wuqi and said, "Little fella, three primordial immortals. Here are 3, and you must give me 3 offerings in the future." Wuqi nodded and promised. "But you'll have to help me when the time comes," he said in a deep voice. Clapping his hands excitedly, Lei Meng laughed wildly and said, "That's a deal. You have a good reputation. I trust you." Amidst his laughter, he unleashed countless bolts of lightning that wrapped around King Baishan and his companions, including the 13 sun oracles. With his own power of thunder, Lei Meng had created a small world of thunder and lightning, ready to entangle King Baishan and the 2 supreme oracles around him with his own power. Hand in hand with Princess Zhonglu, Wuqi also laughed and stepped into the small world manifested by the natural phenomena medallion. The vast black smoke rising from the formation of 10 extinctions was unleashed with a rumble, turning into countless evil spirits that charged toward Ao Buzin, and the others with a murderous air. But as soon as the formation of 10 extinctions moved, the fiend-slaying sword formation in the periphery moved as well. A vast amount of sword energy transformed into thunderbolts and flames that came whistling over from all directions, blocking the attack of the formation of 10 extinctions. Ao Buzin and the others looked at each other helplessly. Lord Xianxing sat down helplessly on the roof of the palace and said, "I understand what Brother Wuqi meant. If you don't step into the Dao realm, you will always be an ant. Now, we can only wait for the result." Thoughtlessly, Catfish Flood Dragon pulled out 2 corpses from her storage ring, whose heads were smashed to pieces by her hammers. She opened her mouth and began to gnaw on them. While chewing, she said vaguely, "Don't worry, Wuqi is very cunning. Although the cultivation base of his true form has not improved much over the years, his clones, Ao Buzin, and the others all had sinister smiles on their faces. Yes, the cultivation base of Wuqi's 18 blood-draining celestial fiends was constantly improving along with the cultivation base of Wuqi's true form. Wuqi and Princess Zhonglu stepped into the small world manifested by the natural phenomena medallion. It was a lifeless continent with nothing but a boundless black desert. A gloomy and dry wind blew across the desert, raising large amounts of sand and dust in the air. The collision of the tiny grains of sand could actually produce huge thunderbolts. Countless grains of sand and dust surged into each other, and the void was filled with water tank-sized thunderbolts that danced chaotically in the sky. It was a world of lightning that Wuqi had created based on Lei Meng's hometown. The white-bone demon god, Guiyu, was covered in lightning. He was swinging a scythe with a long handle and slashing at the void. A few places had already been slashed by him, and the space was trembling under his tremendous strength. Fortunately, the natural phenomena medallion was an extraordinary artifact personally crafted by the sacred Emperor Zhuanxiu, so it had a strong defense. Otherwise, with Guiyu's attack, this part of the void would have long been chopped to pieces by him. Seeing Wuqi and Princess Zhonglu step into the void hand in hand, Guiyu carried the scythe on his back and stared at Wuqi with his eyes flashing with green ghost fire. "I hate this place. It looks a little like the fantasy realm of Thunderstorm, the birthplace of the Thunder Fiends, the mortal enemies of our clan." Wuqi smiled, nodded, and said, "That's for the best. I'm here to kill you." Flicking his fingers, Wuqi said, "How many virtues can the heavenly Tao give me for killing a fiend god who invaded this world?" Guiyu paused, then suddenly burst into wild laughter, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He laughed so hard that even his bones creaked, and all his teeth nearly flew out of his mouth. Chapter 8:16. After laughing wildly for a long time, Guiyu pointed at Wuqi and said with a cold grin, "You want to kill me for merit?" Wuqi nodded seriously. He stretched his neck and abruptly grew to about 100 feet tall. Purple golden dragon scales emerged all over his body, and a pair of 7-colored dragon horns slowly grew out of his forehead. Dragons were the gods of wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. As Wuxia transformed into a dragon man with the dragon kill, a dragon aura spread out in all directions. Countless thunderbolts shot out from the friction between the sand and dust in the air immediately began to spin according to Wuqi's will, gradually turning into a whirlpool of thunderclouds with a diameter of 10,000 miles. A 5-colored divine ray burst out from the top of Princess Zhongli's head. The avatar of the god of thunder slowly raised both hands in the shrine, gathering all the thunderbolts in its palms. Gradually, the huge thunderbolt compressed into a fist-sized purple thunderball. This was the strongest attack of the ancient god of thunder, the void-shattering divine thunder, a supreme thunder magic that could even blow up the primordial chaos. With Princess Zhongli's current cultivation base, this divine thunder was enough to pose a great threat to enemies who were several times stronger than her. Guiyu shook his head desperately, his white teeth clattering and making a mocking noise. He pointed at Wuqi and said with a smile, "Do you secret palace's dragon kill? Years ago, I killed a man who was twice as strong as you and had also practiced the dragon kill. A genius who cultivates both fleshly body and magic is nothing in my eyes. My body is condensed from the pure yang ghost energy. Unless you are proficient in the art of subduing ghosts, what can you do to me?" After commenting on Wuqi, he gave Princess Zhonglu a sidelong glance, shook his head and said with a sigh, No. It's true that thunder magic is the strongest defensive magic for immortal cultivators like you, but the Ghost Fiend clan and the Thunder Fiend clan have been fighting for countless generations, and I'm proficient in all kinds of thunder magic. At most, your thunder magic can attack my pure yang ghost body with 30% of its power. How can you hurt me?" Wuqi could not help but laugh inwardly. This Guiyu was an honest fiend god. Before the fight even began, he had already revealed all his trump cards. The absolute yang ghost body condensed from absolute yang ghost chi? In this world created by the great Saint Pangu, he had never heard of the existence of absolute yang ghost chi. It must be some kind of spiritual energy, unique to the ghost lair's hometown. However, he had underestimated her and Princess Zhongli. This was unacceptable. A stream of chaotic energy rushed out from the top of Wuqi's head, transforming into a dark-een celestial tower that was less than a foot in diameter, hovering high up in the sky. The flow of time in the small world inside the worldly phenomena tablet was accelerated by 2,000 times, and the range was limited to this small world. In the outside world, Lei Ming could hold on for 10 days under the banishment of the laws of the Great Path, so Wuqi had 20,000 days to use. If he still could not deal with the ghost lair after more than 50 years, then he really could not do anything to him. The ghostly fire in Guiyu's eyes flickered. He stretched out his hands and waved them gently. A Tower of Babel that can control the flow of time? Amazing, you actually have such a rare treasure? Are you really going to keep me here? After asking Wuqi, Guiyu did not wait for Wuqi's answer. Instead, he suddenly opened his mouth and sprayed at Wuqi with all his might. A plume of dark mist with an indescribable stench of corpses sprayed toward Wuqi's head. The mist flew so fast that before Wuqi could dodge, he was already wrapped up in it. The purple gold dragon scales with amazing defensive power turned dull in an instant, and Wuqi felt a burning pain all over his body. A large number of dragon scales lost their vitality and turned a lifeless grayish-white color. Dozens of dragon scales on Wuqi's chest turned into white dust and drifted away from his body. The 1-foot-wide flesh on his chest had its life force sucked away by the ghostly aura, and like the dragon scales, turned into dead white dust and drifted away. Wuqi was so angry that he laughed. His scroll of stealing was all about plundering external objects to replenish his energy. How could this Guiyu use ghostly aura to rob his life force? But it was indeed very frightening. The dragon scales, which even Princess Zhongli's ancient void-shattering divine thunder could not break, were shattered by Guiyu with just a puff of black smoke. What was the origin of this ghostly aura? With a cold snort, a glinting cloak suddenly appeared behind Wuqi's back. He sped away in a beam of light and came in front of Guiyu in a flash, his fists smashing toward Guiyu's spine like shooting stars. Behind Wuqi, Princess Zhongli let out a clear cry. The purple ball of thunder in her hand shot out silently and smashed toward Guiyu's sternum before Wuqi could. Guiyu laughed strangely. Before Wuqi's fist could get close to his body, his spine had turned into a clump of ghostly aura. The sticky, black ghostly aura transformed into dozens of ferocious bone claws, grabbing toward Wuqi. As for the ancient void-shattering divine thunder that was shooting toward his chest, Guiyu just waved the scythe on his back and casually slashed at the ball of thunder. Wuqi, who was rushing toward Guiyu, could not dodge in time, and the dozens of ghost claws had firmly gripped his body. The ghost claws formed from the pure yang ghost energy were extremely tough and possessed a tremendous strength. Wuqi was grabbed by the claws and struggled for several dozens of times, yet he just could not free himself. When Guiyu saw that Wuqi was trapped by his magic, he laughed even more complacently. The black scythe, which looked like it was made of bones, slashed heavily on the ball of thunder. In Guiyu's surprised gaze, the ball flashed and disappeared, then suddenly appeared in front of his chest and exploded. All the thunderbolts within a radius of 10,000 miles were condensed into a ball of thunder, which also contained a trace of the law of thunder that Princess Zhongli had comprehended. The plasma-like thunderbolts spread silently and enveloped Guiyu's entire body. The purple-blue thunderbolts floated in the air like crystals, with Guiyu's body embedded in the huge ball of thunder like a fly in amber. The high-temperature thunderbolts burned his body and soul. Guiyu let out squeaky screams, and faint black smoke kept rising from his body. But as he had boasted just now, he was proficient in the art of controlling and guarding against thunderbolts. Countless dense black talismans emerged on his pale bones, which reduced the damage caused by the thunderbolts to the minimum. The thunderball unleashed by Princess Zhongli was the softest kind of the void-shattering thunder. Once it hit an enemy, it would stick to him like maggots on a tarsal bone, constantly erupting with soft thunderbolts that could completely wipe out the enemy's existence. But facing Guiyu, who was much stronger than Princess Zhongli, the thunderball was obviously not enough to hurt him. Accompanied by the strange laughter, the lightning around Guiyu's body was gradually extinguished, and his pale bones were exposed one by one. Guiyu looked at Princess Zhongli and said with a hideous smile, "I've told you, how can you hurt me with such a small trick? This supreme tower is a good treasure. Even if I can't control it, it will be a unique treasure when I bring it back. I'll kill you now, then go out and kill everyone outside." Raising the scythe high, Guiyu lowered his head, smiled at Wuqi and said, "How can your close-range fighting skills defeat me, the pure yang ghost body?" The scythe could no longer fall down. Guiyu stared at Wuqi in a daze. Wuqi, who was imprisoned by his ghost magic, was looking up at him and smiling. His enormous body, which was thickly covered in dragon scales, was slowly glowing with a light that looked like molten gold. In Guiyu's shocked eyes, as if he had seen a ghost, Wuqi's body gradually transformed from a dragonman's body into a golden Buddha with 4 faces and 6 arms. When Wuqi was completely transformed into a golden Buddha, Guiyu felt that even the little bit of brain juice left in him was a little useless. Panicked, he looked at Wuqi and screamed, "Aren't you a human warrior? Even if you are a cultivator of both body and magic, you can at most, even if you are a cultivator of both fleshly body and magic, you can at most practice some evil magic like the curses of the human oracles. How could you possibly practice the supreme divine ability of the Buddhist League?" Guiyu wanted to tell him. Everyone in the world knew that the cultivation methods of the human race were incompatible with the mental cultivation methods of Buddhism and Taoism. Wherever the Panga sacred energy went, all the Buddhist power and immortal power would turn into running water. Even for a Buddha of Buddhism, as long as he practiced the body-strengthening cultivation method of the human race, as long as the Panga sacred energy entered his body, his golden Buddha body would slowly melt, and all the Buddhist power would vanish. He would no longer have the great power to subdue demons and devils. But Wuqi was a freak. When he approached Ghostlair's body just now, he had clearly used the dragon kill, a divine ability that was secretly taught in Great Yu's secret palace. How could he transform into the avatar of the Buddha now? If Guiyu had known that Wuqi possessed the divine power of Buddhism, he would not have let him get close to him. Even for ghosts and deities from outer realms, the divine power of Buddhism had a strong restraining effect on him. Most of the reputation of Buddhism for being the best at subduing demons and devils was forged by the white bones of various ghosts and deities from outer realms. Guiyu wanted to cry. He let out a strange cry, and was about to throw Wuqi away with dozens of ghost claws. Laughing strangely, Wuqi opened his mouth and spat out 6 blood-red sword beams. 6 blood centipede swords whistled through the air, and slashed at Guiyu's neck like dragonflies skimming the surface of the water. The inborn spiritual weapon was extremely sharp and murderous. 6 beams of sword light fell one after another. Even though Guiyu's body was condensed from the so-called absolute yang ghost chi, his neck was still cut off. A strange head flew high into the air. Guiyu howled furiously. "How dare you trick me, boy? Strange, how can you use the divine power of Buddhism?" With an angry and puzzled howl, Guiyu's body exploded, turning into a sticky cloud of ghost energy that wrapped around Wuqi. Guiyu's hideous laughter came from the ghost energy. "So what if you have the golden body of Buddhism? With your cultivation base, you are far inferior to..." Guiyu's laughter was once again interrupted by Wuqi's action. Wuqi slapped his own head, and 18 blood-red relics and 18 white relics flew whistling up from the top of his head. 36 relics emitted 2 different kinds of light, one of evil and the other of righteousness, that illuminated the void. Laughing strangely, 18 blood-red shadows rushed out of the red light, stirring up a boundless sea of blood and wrapping Guiyu in it. Meanwhile, the bright light emitted by the 18 white relics sprinkled on the ghost energy like flames. Wherever they passed, the ghost energy trembled like boiling water, and kept making ear-piercing hissing noises. Guiyu let out a shrill scream and quickly transformed into a long stream of black smoke, darting up into the sky. But the 18 blood-red shadows clung to him with the sea of blood, not allowing him to escape. After being polluted by the blood sea, the black gas, which was originally flying fast, became extremely slow. The ghost howled in pain. "The nether blood sea of the 9 nether. How can such a filthy thing exist in this world?" Wuqi paid no attention to Guiyu. He chanted the name of Buddha in a deep voice, and the golden body of Buddha slowly expanded to tens of thousands of miles tall. Sitting cross-legged, Wuqi locked his hands into a lotus incantation gesture, and gripped the void with a radius of 100 miles, covering the black smoke transformed from Guiyu. Word by word, a Buddhist mantra came out of Wuqi's mouth, forming a golden ocean that wrapped the void tightly. After an unknown period of time, a despairing howl came from Wuqi's palm. Along with a deafening rumble, a black pearl wrapped in a sticky green liquid flew up into the sky, smashing straight into the spot between Wuqi's eyebrows. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.